Hey everybody, this is Craig Garber. Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar. We're going to give some love to the rhythm section, man. We got one of the best drummers around with Wes Little. Awesome, very, very, very successful session and touring player out of Nashville. Couple of announcements. Number one, Brian Allen, thanks for connecting us. Brian's been on the show a couple of times.
Yeah.
Brian is Wes's partner in crime in the rhythm section, great bass player out of Nashville. Go to everyonelovesguitar.com/subscribe and subscribe to the show in audio, and you could hit the YouTube channel there as well. And Carlos Santana and Joe Walsh, I really love to have those guys on the show. If you can connect me with them, please do. Before we get started with Wes, I want to give Wes a huge shout out, man. He just lost, we're with the svelte Wes Little. He just lost 40 pounds, man. So
Thanks, man.
looking great, man.
Thanks, man.
All right, Wes Little, one of the busiest, most popular drummers in Nashville. And one of his own biggest gigs was in the winter of 2009. He playing the inaugural ball for the newly elected President Barack Obama. That night, he was part of the house band backing up artists including Stevie Wonder, Sting, Mary J. Blige, Faith Hill, and Beyonce. Wes is originally from Wingate, North Carolina, which is a small college town southeast of Charlotte. Both his parents were educators, and he was always drawn to music. He initially got an acoustic guitar, but like everybody who gets an acoustic guitar, the bad action discouraged him. Then one day, his dad, who was responsible for buying musical gear at the local high school, brought home a catalog from the Tama Drum Company, and Wes saw a picture of Billy Cobham seated behind one of the biggest drum sets he'd ever seen, and he kind of became inspired to do that. Next thing you know, he's out there in the backyard building a drum kit after Billy Cobham's drum kit with firewood. And said, that's it. We're getting this kid a drum set. Wes has a master's degree in jazz drumming from the Manhattan School of Music. He wound up spending 10 years in New York City playing in theater orchestras, sideband sessions, and rock band. He connected with hip-hop legend Chuck D. We'll talk about this today. And he worked on several of his post-Public Enemy bands. That guy's got literally the best voice in rap. Just a great voice.
Oh, yeah, man. It's the power of the, of I don't know how to best explain it, but yes, this tenor baritone.
It's so authoritative, man.
Yeah, no, when he speaks, you listen.
Yeah, it's like, it's like you feel you did something wrong. You just got to shut up. Okay, so he in some of the work that he did with Chuck D was in Confrontation Camp and Fine Arts Militia. While Wes was in New York, he met his future wife, Britt Savage, and they've been living in Nashville since 2008, where, as I said, he's a really busy first call session player. He's toured or recorded with Robben Ford, who was on this show, Joe Nichols, Emmylou Harris, Warren Haynes, who's coming on soon, Trey Anastasio, Eric Johnson, and hundreds of others. He's also expanded his work currently as working as a producer and a songwriter. He plays regularly as the ultra mod drummer in his wife Britt Savage's band Twang Deluxe, as well as leading his own funk band in Nashville called The Big Greasy. Wes and Brian Allen recently came out with a really cool CD called Crazy People Dance Party, and the name of their band that they put together is Clinically Speaking, and we had Brian on the show a while back to talk about that record. Wes is really comfortable playing, and he's incredibly diverse, man. This guy is. He's comfortable playing any style of music, and he's played at venues from Carnegie Hall to the Grand Ole Opry's and CBGB's before it was a
right
John Varvatos clothing store.
Right. Come on.
And as Wes said, as long as it's musical, honest, and intentional, it works for him. Dude, thank you so much for coming on the show. And
thanks for having me, Craig.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I've been wanting to have you on for a while. I heard about you, honestly, like a month into doing these interviews.
Wow.
Yeah, because I was talking to a lot of session guys, and they're like, "Oh, I was just doing a session with Wes Little." Who's that? That guy. And then it became you and Brian. It was always those guys are the best rhythm section in that, and it was like
awesome,
really consistent, man. So congratulations.
Well, that's good to hear. Hopefully, we're doing something right.
No, man, all your hard work is definitely, you know what it's like. You build up a good reputation, man. I know you're modest, but you earned it. So
thank you.
That's a bold move that you went from a small town in North Carolina to go to college in New York City. There's plenty. You could have gone to Berkeley, plenty of places. I was curious, what prompted you to go to school up there, and were there some initial culture shocks or adjustments that you maybe had to make?
Absolutely. Certainly to the latter. It was a huge culture shock. But as to why, I think and it was funny. It's sort of serendipitous. This morning, I saw a video that my teacher from East Carolina University posted. And his name is Carol Dashiell, and he played with, and in fact, this is a video of him playing with Maceo.
Oh, wow.
While we were in college, he did that tour a couple of summers. Or while we were in college, I say that while I was in college.
While you and your teacher were in college.
Yeah, and he was teaching, having to unfortunately deal with us. But no, he was teaching us while he was also doing these tours. And he also toured with Ray Charles in the summer, and he did some with Bobby Watson, who's a jazz saxophonist out of New York. And it was just a great experience to study with him, with all my teachers, really. I mean, I was very fortunate. The percussion instructor there at the time, Mark Ford, has now gone on to be the percussion instructor and the director of studies at University of North Texas.
Oh, really big music school.
So, yeah. So, I mean, he's doing great there. And I grew up, as you said, in Wingate, North Carolina. It was a small southern town, and my mother actually taught at the college there. So I could have gone for free, but, they just didn't have a music program.
Sure.
To speak of. And I'm not in any way putting them down, because some of the music teachers there are like family friends. So they were all certainly talented, but it just wasn't going to get what I needed there. So after auditioning at a few schools for undergrad in-state, because that was cheaper tuition.
Sure.
I decided on ECU. And I'm really glad I did, because my teacher, Carol, ended up coming there the second year I was there. And he's a jazz bass player. Or just say bass player, because he sort of imparted that concept of being able to cover a lot of different styles, which has really served me well, obviously in my career, because I have played with a diverse list of people. And I think that's sort of where the path started. He was like, well, you guys got to move to New York and blah, blah, blah. You got to move to New York.
Okay.
And it was sort of like, he definitely inspired us. And New York where are you now?
I'm in Tampa, but I'm from New York City.
Yeah, because I can hear it. But
and I got to tell you something. You just said something that was so Southern when you said about, it was really like, this is what I love about the South and Southern people. You were talking about the schools. They didn't have a music program. I'm not trying to disparage the school. Many of these people,
bless their hearts.
Yeah, right. Bless their. Like in New York, they didn't have a fucking music program. I wasn't going anywhere near that.
Right. Yeah, New York's like, forget about it. Yeah. But it's just.
That's funny.
It's that kind of vibe. So you understand, but like New York,
totally.
It was, it's definitely not for everybody. And Carol. Initially, and I guess I was just thinking about it this morning because I saw the video someone had posted and he shared it. He stressed so many things about style and groove and time and things that really inform me today that I use every day. But he was like, oh, you got to move to New York. You got to move to New York. So I auditioned at several schools. One of them was University of Miami, which is a great program.
Great program.
Tomorrow, I'm talking with the dean of that school, because speaking of diversity, I am putting together a band for an event that's happening down there in February.
That's great, man.
A pretty big event, but it's going to be a Latin band. So, I would diverge more information, but at this point I can't. So it's just, but needless to say, I'm talking with the dean. He's going to help me out. And I know what a great program that is because, I went down there and checked it out. And I think I got accepted, but they didn't really, at the time, I don't know if there was some reasoning. I don't know if I didn't get the kind of scholarship I was hoping for, or sure. There was some reason I didn't go there. But it's an excellent school.
Yeah, I've interviewed tons of guys.
So I'm going to speak with the dean tomorrow. It's like I thought about it this morning. I'm at the stage of my life now, like with you or him, like we have to schedule times for phone calls. It's like you just can't. You're no longer to say, "Hey, man," it's.
It's a good thing.
we have a scheduled phone call tomorrow, and hopefully he will help me get some personnel that I need. I'm MDing this Latin band, which is yet another reason, coming
Yeah.
that school of thought, like, well, when am I ever going to play the clave with my left foot and like this songo or this merengue or this, or this mambo pattern. And it's like, well, now I am.
Yeah.
And strangely enough, I just did a band in the box thing for a guy here in Nashville, which those are great. It's
What is
software.
that?
It's
Oh,
software.
the software
Yeah.
band in the box. Yeah, sure. I know
Yeah,
that.
like they recorded a lot of people, and like even Ron Carter's been on Band in the Box. I didn't realize that, but I did like some island things and some Latin things for them. So here again, it's just another validation of studying these different styles that has brought me to this point, and is actually something that is I have monetized. And, and it wasn't just academic or theoretical. So anyway, Carol said, go to New York. So I also looked at Eastman School of Music, and they did offer me a large scholarship. At the time, I guess it was the biggest one they had, and I thought they had full school things about that. I realized I was going to be more drums and stuff. It's saying my internet connection is unstable. Sorry.
Yeah, it's back now. It's back.
So picking up from where we left off. Okay, cool. So I went up to Rochester. They offered me this scholarship, but there were two reasons that I thought it would be probably not the best choice for me. One was the weather.
It's freezing up there, dude.
I can't deal with it. And there was so many days of snow and clouds. I just would have been a depressive mess.
Yeah.
And then secondly, I was going to be teaching more than probably actually having a drum set teacher or venues and opportunities to play. So I thanked them. Bill Dobbins was the guy at the time, and I thanked him profusely. And then I auditioned at Manhattan. They accepted me. They gave me a scholarship of some kind, and I just decided to go there. And I think the reason being was I knew college would give me a sort of like resting place while I could learn the city. I'd sort of have a little safe haven in college while I learned the city and learned how everything worked. And then I would join the workforce there, which is what I did.
That's really good thinking, because as opposed to just moving up there, then you're like a deer in headlights. You don't know anybody.
Yeah.
You built a network now.
Well, that was part of it. And, I knew.
Smart.
Well, thank you. Yeah. I knew that there was probably the weakest point in my playing at that point, even though I'd been studying it in school formally, was this sort of traditional jazz thing. I had a lot of the other bases covered just from playing it through the years at that point. But I knew it would be a good school for that, and it would expose me to the city. Now, the student loan debt, well, that's another thing.
Yeah.
But, the thing is, I think at least they're more aware of how to deal with student loan debt now, and the interest rates are somewhat more manageable, and hopefully. But, I still say that was good for me, because it put me in that network, and it started me on the path to playing with people like Chuck D and these other bands I was in, and these things that led to the gigs that were like playing at Obama's inauguration. And that is a sort of a landmark gig in the bio that we can focus on. But it's just sort of indicative of how my career has been, which is just varied, gigs that require a certain level of skill and adaptability. And that's why I think when we composed that bio, I did it with a talented writer here out of Nashville. That was a good focal point to sort of sum things up. So, that was the reason for moving to Manhattan and going to the Manhattan School of Music in New York. And
culture shocks.
The culture shock. Okay, you'll think this is. Yeah, I mean, the first year, what I did is, and I just did an interview the other day for Modern Drummer on a home studio, and I recounted the studios that I've built. And they've all really, except for this one, well, even to some degree, this one was out of necessity. So the first one, when I first got up to New York and was at the Manhattan School of Music, we had lockers where you could put your drum kit in a locker that was like on the 3rd floor, and you would put it on a cart of some kind and roll it up to the 6th floor and set it up. You would practice what you needed to practice, tear the drum kit down, roll it back down to your locker, which was just a real drag.
That's like an hour and a half a day extra work.
Yeah, and it's New York, so everything's going to take longer. You know, just walking up the street is going to take longer somehow.
Where is Manhattan School of Music located?
It was at 122nd and Broad, essentially. It was the old Juilliard.
Oh, okay. And where were you living? So many of our listeners ordered the last coat when the company set up this special offer for Everyone Loves Guitar listeners. The company wanted to make this offer available one more time, again, just for listeners of Everyone Loves Guitar. So if you didn't get a chance to take advantage of it last month, you're getting one more chance to get free bottles of this breakthrough nanotechnology. So listen up. Hey guys, this is Craig. First of all, I'm really thrilled to tell you about this next advertiser because the owner and I have been friends for close to 10 years. And when I say friends, I don't mean Facebook friends. We're actually good friends. We've been to each other's homes. Our families have eaten meals together, and I've carried his kids in my arms when they were babies. And even more important to you, he's got a killer product on the cutting edge of technology. So if you drive a car, truck, or motorcycle, or if you play guitar or any other stringed instrument, then pay really close attention to what I'm about to tell you. Because I want to talk to you about the Last Coat. The Last Coat is a proprietary formula that lets you wash, polish, and put a protective coating on your car. It's based on hydrophobic liquid glass nanotechnology, which is an advanced and environmentally safe technology that actually protects any surface, including guitars. The product's manufactured right here in the United States. All you do is apply it once, and it creates an ultra-thin layer which protects your car's surface for 6 months under any kind of driving conditions. Your car looks like you've spent basically all day washing and waxing it, not the 20 minutes it actually takes you. Then anytime your car gets dirty over the next 6 months, just wash it off and you'll see the water beating up on there, and then wipe it down. And that same protective shiny coating that you have after applying it will still be there. It provides protection from rain, sleet, or snow, and there's no more dirty water residue. And on top of everything else, the Last Coat is 100% guaranteed to work, meaning if you're unsatisfied with the Last Coat for any reason at all, or if it fails to live up to any of its claims, just send the product back. They'll give you a full refund, no headaches, no hassles, anytime for 365 days after you order it. And here's the really cool stuff. The Last Coat also works just as well on guitars, basses, countertops, mirrors, anything wood or pretty much any surface at all. I've used it on all my guitars, including my 335, and they're literally mint. To get this product, which includes free travel-sized bottles for your guitar that fit right inside your guitar case, along with free microfiber towels. And on top of that, if you use the coupon code ELG15, you're also going to get another 15% off. To get all this, go to everyonelovesguitar.com/TLC, and don't forget to use the coupon code ELG15, and you'll also get 15% off. That's everyonelovesguitar.com/TLC. Are you looking to buy or sell a home in the Tampa Bay area without having to deal with pushy realtors? Then make sure you connect with West Florida Real Estate. West Florida Real Estate has helped over 300 homeowners and investors buy and sell their properties over the last 5 years. Their service is outstanding, just like back in the days when there was actually service in the service business, and you'll never have to deal with any kind of sales junk when you're working with them. For more information, email Ann with an E at westfloridarealestate.com. That's ANNE at westfloridarealestate.com. If you enjoy this show and you'd like to support it, go to everyonelovesguitar.com/support.
125th and Broad.
Oh, wow. What year was this?
1994.
Okay, so the area started to clean up a bit, but it was by no means stellar.
Stabbed and shot. People were still getting stabbed and shot. This was pre-Bill Clinton Harlem.
Yeah.
So it was pre-Alicia Keys Harlem. You know, this was like Harlem when it was still like sketchy. Yeah. And even one time, I remember I was walking. Well, this is an aside, but I was walking to the grocery store that had a C-Town.
Right. C-Town.
Remember those places?
Yeah, of course. I haven't heard that
Like
in a long
at
time.
Amsterdam and 125th, and I was walking through, I think it's the Grant housing or whatever those project housings were. And, I was just walking along. It's kind of cold. I had my hands in my pockets, and these cops like come from everywhere, and they're like pulling their guns and stuff at me. Like, take your hands out of your pockets. I'm like, what? I'm putting my hands up and which is absolutely what you should do in that situation.
They probably thought you just copped drugs.
Or they thought I just committed a crime. I was a perp at that point. So they figured out that I wasn't. They let me go, and I was just like,
I'm just a drum student, officer.
right. I'm cleaning out my underwear going to C-Town, Come on, man. But so stuff like that was still happening. And it took me a year. It took me a year to get used to it. I would wake up anxious, because it had come from such a small sort of sheltered place to be sort of in the midst of, that.
Well, you're living off Broadway too. There's the noise 24/7.
Well,
buses, cars, horns, fire department.
Right there at the elevated train at 125th. So.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
If you saw, what is the name of that movie with Ben Stiller? Secret Life of Walter Mitty. When he's on the train platform and he jumps off and there's CGI and he flies into a window. I actually think that's the apartment building I was in.
Where you live? That's pretty funny, man.
But yeah, it was right there on the L. And so I learned a lot that first year. I moved up in the winter, which was kind of stupid.
Yeah, it's cold.
At ECU. And it started snowing when we shut the U-Haul trailer, and it didn't stop for 3 months.
Oh,
so
wow.
It was just it was a lot to process, but I got used to it. And then the second year is when things started to happen. I'd become a little more acclimated, and I decided to build a studio in my bedroom. So I built this little box that was it was probably 6 by 10, and the bedroom was 7 by 12.
Yeah, I was gonna say
and we switched the door frame around so the door would open out, and then I would open the door of the practice room to get into it, where I could leave my drum set up to practice.
Okay.
And then I'd sort of soundproofed it. There was a laundry below. There was a double wall for this apartment building. The guys upstairs played merengue till 2 or 3 in the morning.
So they were cool.
The European restaurant was rocking at 3 in the morning. So I'm like, you know what? You guys can't say shit.
No.
So, but I did use sort of what is now the Arlex sheet block and sort of put it in the walls of the room, and then slept on top of it.
Oh, I was wondering, where'd you sleep after?
Yeah, it was a practice room in the bedroom, and I slept on top of it. And that was sort of my first studio. But that helped me deal with the practice problem. I as a funny aside, I do remember how country I was when I first moved up there. I would fly home because I still had gigs in Raleigh, North Carolina, and students. So on the weekends, I would finish a big band rehearsal Thursday night at 6:30. And then sometimes by Thursday night at 10, I would be in Raleigh, North Carolina playing a gig.
Oh, wow. You're a fucking hustler, man. That's badass.
Yeah, well, it was stupid, but I also had a student set up the drums so they're covered in case the flight was delayed. And it was much easier flying then. But I do remember one time I was going out to LaGuardia, and they did have an M60 bus which went across town. And I didn't know that was there. So I'd taken a train. I took the N train way up into Astoria or somewhere.
But the train doesn't go to LaGuardia.
It doesn't. So you have to wait for a bus. You get the N train at the terminus. You wait for the bus. And I was waiting for the bus, and I saw this sign that said "No standing." You know where this is going, right? This is going. So, I was looking at the sign. I was looking at my suitcase. I didn't see any dentures. So I just sat down on my suitcase. That's how country I was when I moved to New York. I had no idea that, that was a parking sign.
Yeah, it just meant no parking. Yeah.
That's what it's like, no standing in this general area. But I was waiting on a bus. It's just ridiculous, man.
Well, thank God it didn't say no sitting. You might have laid on the ground, Wes.
Yeah, yeah. It's just that was the kind of environment, you know, and it's good that I had school to sort of like ease me into it, because that's, you know,
Yeah,
there were
because
a
you
lot.
weren't the only guy there that was not from the area by a
Right.
long
And
shot.
honestly, there's a guy who shall remain nameless, very talented musician who I was in school with. I, in fact, played on my recital at ECU with this same teacher, Carol, who was playing with
Mm.
Maceo. He was one of the other players at my senior recital. And very talented kid. He moved up to New York, and he was even playing in Wynton Marsalis's big band at Lincoln Center and doing some other things. But he, you know, he went to community college to finish high school so he could practice. I mean, he was so dedicated. And
Wow.
he was young. He was probably maybe 17, possibly 18 when he moved up there. And he
Wow.
got involved with some other jazz cats that were like doing heroin and stuff. And I mean, these were name guys, but they're doing drugs. He got hooked. And now, you know, he had to move back to North Carolina, and his dad was like taking him to gigs so he wouldn't cop, you know, and that's just depressing. Because I
Man,
mean,
that's just
this kid could have easily been the next Joe Henderson or, you know, Stan Getz or whatever.
yeah.
But he got sidetracked. So
That's too bad, man.
yeah, I'm thankful that that didn't happen to me. And I think as much as I spent on school
Oh,
with the scholarship, you know, and just to be there 2 years not having a gig or a job, I think it was still the smart decision because it allowed me to adapt. Because that
yeah.
city takes a year.
Yeah, especially if you're from a small town, in all
Yeah,
fairness, it is not just the normal customs of how you might say hello to someone.
right.
How you respond to, oh, how you doing today, is night and day.
Yeah, it's like,
And
hey, pal, what's going on there? You
well,
know,
it's just the whole. I get it, man. I think it was a really smart move that you did
well,
there.
thank you. And looking back on it, even recounting it now, it does make sense. So I'm glad I did it that way. And, you know, when I finished school, I moved out to Brooklyn
Mm.
uh, with my ex-wife. And she was one of those people that was not cut out for New York. And
Well, you
that,
got married young.
yeah,
Yeah,
really.
I did too. First time.
Exactly. That practice marriage.
Yeah,
But
I said that one time, practice when someone sent a note and they must be going for a divorce or something. It said, that was fucking awful and insensitive that you said that. I'm like, man,
well,
I'm sure it's one of many awful and insensitive things
yeah,
I
and
said.
let me just temper that with we didn't know what we were doing.
Yeah, who does? You get married when you're
We
23.
didn't have kids, you know, we were kids, and
Yeah.
you don't know. There's a lot you don't know, and we were both still going through a lot of changes and a big move like that. So, you know, I think the best way to put it is we were both good people that weren't really good together,
Yeah, sure, man.
and we had different ideas about how we wanted life to go. And, you know, she wanted to move back to North Carolina, honestly, back to where we'd gone to college. And that's fine. I think, you know, I bear her no ill will. There wasn't any, it was a fairly amicable split. So we didn't.
West, this is Southern moment number 2.
Exactly. Bless her heart.
She's
Bless
one.
my heart. Bless her heart. So, yeah, I think though it was, you know, shortly after that, I, began to sort of find, you know, my way in New York with working. I mean, I did things everybody does when they first move up there. I'm in a wedding band,
Sure.
and I'm looking for other things to play. And then I'm playing with singer-songwriters. And then I've got some original bands that I'm playing in that are trying to get record deals. And some of them eventually did, you know, like with Chuck D.
Yeah.
But a lot of them didn't, you know. And I did that whole sideman thing in New York for really the entire time I was there. And I think when I moved to Nashville, it was more, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. I did the sideman thing, but we were also more in bands. I was trying to go for the artist thing with bands so that we could get a deal and get signed. And then when I moved to Nashville, I was like, okay, I want to focus more on being a sideman and a session player, and eventually just a session player. So luckily, through that journey, I've arrived at the destination I wanted. but yeah, the first few years in New York,
It's tough, man.
and that's also where I built studio number 2. Part of my reason for moving to Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, which was, way out.
It's pretty far, yeah.
Yeah, is so I could park my car and have a practice space, because me and my buddy Rodney Howard, who plays drums for like Gavin DeGraw and Avril Lavigne, we both moved up from ECU.
It's funny. I had Gavin's guitar player on here a long time ago.
What's his name? Brian Dennis?
No, he's from down here. Billy. He's from here in St. Pete. Billy, really nice young kid and very talented. I'm sorry, I got to just look this up. Billy Norris.
I got you. Yeah, he probably was on after, Rodney was with him. I don't know. It's probably been a little over a decade, probably a little better than that. But anyway, we both had practice rooms in the basement. And
you rented a house?
No, we were in an apartment building.
Oh, and they let you set up Really?
The super was like, the shady kind of.
Oh, you slipped him some money?
Yeah, well, we had a joke because everything with that guy was $150. It was like,
that's how New York is. If you can,
like,
if you got money, we'll figure it out.
The thing is, he was supposed to let people have those basement spaces for nothing. That was storage for the apartment building. But what he did is he put us both underneath his apartment where he would be the only one bothered.
Oh.
And then we put these soundproof rooms in the basement. And then we give him $150 a month. And honestly, another sort of catalyst to me moving to Nashville when I did was he was moving back to Turkey, this superintendent of the building.
Oh.
And he said, okay, you got to lose the rooms. And I was like, oh, man.
Because $150 is well worth it for the amount of work you're going to get done. And
to go downstairs and, by the end, I was cutting a few little records there. I mean, it wasn't like, it started out as a practice space where I could have rehearsals, and then it ended up being sort of my first real recording experience where I had some of the mic frees that are even in here today.
That's great.
But it's just crazy, man. It's just crazy that's what we used to do. And we would put up with it because it was a good deal for New York.
Yeah, that's the way it is. That's cool, man. I want to ask you one question about, a lot of people have the mindset of, as a lot of musicians, I need to specialize. I need to be known as the blues guy, the jazz guy, the shredder guy, the fusion guy, or I need to be like, I can play pop, but I'm the fusion guy. They know to call me. When you have gone the other way, you have deliberately practiced to be excellent at a lot of different genres, and it's kept you incredibly busy.
Yeah, man. I mean, I can mostly attest. It sort of started with that same teacher. He was like, you got to understand style. You've got to understand this is the language of funk. This is the language of jazz. This is the language of pop. This is the language of country. And as a session player, that's what we do every day. That being said, yeah, there's something great about specializing and being the guy for this.
Yeah.
I did have a conversation with Glenn Worf, who,
I know that name. No, I know that.
He's a bass player, but he's been out with Mark Knopfler for years. And that's just like the gig he's done. But he co-produced Miranda's last record or 2 records ago. I mean, he's really an excellent musician. And just a killing bass player. I've done sessions with him, and he's seen it all. He's seen the whole session scene in this town. And with regards to sessions, he said, I've seen a lot of guys specialize, and that'll be great. And their phone will ring off the hook for a period of time. And then when that period has lapsed, then they're identified with that period, and it becomes harder in some ways to work. I think about there was a drummer, Tony Thompson.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was all those Nile records or but there were a string of hits back in the 80s playing drums. And I relate this to drums because I'm a drummer. But then when that went away, he kind of did. And I'm trying to, at this point in my life, I'm trying to diverse my income streams. and I'm also trying to be diverse in my musical streams.
As is prudent for any musician in 2019.
Yeah, if you're thinking about it as a business. Now, I
Yes.
totally agree with the artistic vision and staying true to your art. I would never begrudge anyone for doing that. I think that's vitally important, but that is not always going to translate to money, and it's not
Yes.
always going to translate to staying busy. And if that's not important to you, then that's great. And it's not the most important thing to me, but it is an important thing. You know, after being on the road for 10 years or after playing, you know, gigs that I really don't want to play, like when I first moved to New York and I'm trying to like, you know, hustle and, you know, in other words, I'm trying to be a specialized thing. I want to be the drummer in this band.
Right.
And I want this band to be successful. Well, in order for that band to be successful, I'm going to have to pay the bills somehow as I do that.
Of course, as any project you're doing.
Anything, any line of work, even,
Right.
you know.
Dude, starting this show, I've done the same thing.
As an entrepreneur, you understand.
Yeah,
So,
100%.
and that's great to have that vision. And I think you should stick to your guns. And chances are, if you do, you will eventually reap the rewards of it. I'm just trying to increase my chances. So, yeah, it requires more focus. Some people specialize because they either don't have the desire, or in some cases, they may not have the, like, I'll see people say, like, sometimes on social media, well, I hate this kind of music, or I hate drum solos. Well, do you hate drum solos because you can't do it, or you just hate it?
Right, right.
You hate it because you don't understand it, or you do and you just still hate it. So, I mean, like, I think both are valid, but I think we also need to, we need to understand that saying I specialize in something shouldn't be a reason to cop out of learning something or being able to do something. And the drummers that heavily influenced me could do a lot of different stuff, like Vinnie Colaiuta or Steve Gadd, or you know, he was more specialized in a way, but still Buddy Rich, you know. So these guys, as they go, and then even some of the guys I'm listening to now are just monster players, but they can do a lot of different things, and they understand a lot of different types of music. So for me, that's what I want to do. It may not be for everybody, and if somebody wants, I would probably say I'm not your first call for a metal guy. You know,
Right.
that is something I've dabbled in. Certainly as a kid, I had the double bass drums and was, you know, fascinated by it, but it's not really where I'm at.
Right.
So I would probably not be the call for that.
Right. It's interesting. Lee Sklar, the bass player, he's coming on the show soon. And I was prepping and I watched an interview he did. And he made a really valid comment. It goes exactly to what you said. He was talking to some people and he said, look, if you want to play, that's great. But if you want to work.
And he would know.
Yeah. Right.
By the way, just as an aside, he posted something that was hysterical I saw on social media. And it just was like, it says, when your client asks if you can do it for cheaper. You should just look this up because it's really funny. He like had a horse, right?
Yeah.
And the tail of the horse and the hindquarters and everything, beautifully drawn, you know, nicely sketched, looks beautiful. And then as it goes, it sort of becomes a pencil drawing. Then it becomes a stick figure horse with like a smile on his face, like a 2-year-old drew it.
Man,
And it was like perfect.
You get what you pay for.
Yeah. And you know, you do have to work. You know, you have to work it. Like, I know for what I've got coming up in February, I'm going to have to study a lot of Latin music. I'm going to have to learn how to combine the roles of being a timbalero. I think that's the proper way to say it. I better know before I start. And playing drums. You know, I'm going to have to fit in with some major Latin folks as their musical director.
Yeah.
And a drummer in the band to put on the show with minimal rehearsals. And, you know, hopefully we'll be able to rehearse Miami School of Music. They won't hold not going there against me. But you know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
it's like that's yeah, it takes a lot. And I think I've really tried to remain focused on my goals and at the same time try to find time to work it in, but it's very hard. I mean, it's very hard to make it to the gym every day when you're trying to work. You're trying to let work lead to work. So you got to network.
Which
And
is really important.
yeah,
Really
and then you're
important
also,
in this business.
exactly. And you have to be really flexible with when, like, I got a call yesterday. Can you come in on Wednesday and do a session at 8 a.m.? And it's like, oh, wow, 8 a.m. Luckily, I can work it in. But there's that. And then, unfortunately now, in the music business in general, the artist, you are your own brand, you're your own entity more than ever.
Yes.
You have to promote yourself. So you're asking me about the website. And I'm like, oh, yeah, man, I got to do that. And yes, I do need to update my website, but I also need to practice this. I need to do this. I got to record that. I got to get this out for this client. I got to make that phone call to that guy. And there's just something has to give. So eventually, hopefully as financial resources become available, I will pay someone else to just,
do the stuff they're good in and that you're
yeah,
not.
like, so here at the studio, I'm going to get an intern or a second engineer. And then, that's because, I have to really prioritize my time. And I did have a discussion with a friend the other day, and he's also a go-getter and a hard worker, but it's like we are so leveraged for time. When we have a phone conversation, he and I are usually eating a meal, and we're
Right.
both smacking, and it doesn't it doesn't offend either one of us,
Of course.
because we understand, like, this is the time we have,
Right.
And I would say I'm sort of straying away from your original question, but it was why diversify, and that's why.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that I can cover a lot of bases, so when this style falls by the wayside, or this is no longer the thing, or being the guy who only plays tempo blocks, on a session is no longer in style with Lady Gaga,
Right.
then what do I do?
It's interesting. It's almost like your whole career unknowingly was grooming you for sessions.
Yeah. And I really,
Yeah.
my skill set, that's really where, and even as a kid, I remember thinking, oh man, what would be great? It would be great to go in on a Monday morning and just play drums and make a record and get paid for it and then go home. I mean, even as a child, I was thinking, oh, that would be a cool thing to do. And here it is, a Monday, and we're making a recording in my studio.
Yeah.
I mean, it's granted, I'm not working at the moment, but that is what has happened.
Yeah. So it's, you actualized you're effectively, man, you lived your dreams.
Yeah. Thank you. And
which is awesome.
I'm very happy about that. But I also understand that now more than ever, it's a challenge in this business. What was I honestly think, regardless of their talent, like drummers like Vinnie Colaiuta and Steve Gadd and those guys I idolize, certainly as session players. Like, I know Gadd in the 80s and 90s, they were working 10, 2, 6s, and 10s.
Yeah.
And that's why they were on drugs. He had to have the coke. I mean, I don't know, as a friend of mine said, Peruvian marching powder.
Yeah.
They're tired. They're worn out. They're exhausted. And, I'm sure some was recreational, but they were really, really busy. That doesn't exist now. Not in that way.
Not to that extent, no.
And I've talked with a lot of different musicians across the spectrum, across the country, across the world. And because of the digital delivery of music, enabling it to be free, has led to a
devaluation in the worth
of music.
Yeah.
And so now we're at this crossroads where we have to figure out how to monetize our art. And a lot of people complain about it. I've been one of those at times, but I also like, okay, how can I do this? How can I still continue to push this forward? and find a way to live my dream despite the environment that we're in. So that's kind of where I've landed, and there are other different ways of doing that, and I think you just have to be creative. I mean, it's not like the jazz players and all these great recordings that we listen to and love. It's not like they were getting paid a ton of money.
Right.
They did it because they loved it and they felt it was their devotion to their art. But now it has been preserved and we still love it. But yeah, I learned quickly after going to jazz school for 2 years that I was not going to be comfortable and living the way I'd like to, more than likely with my skill level in that field.
Just as a jazzer, yeah.
Just as a jazzer. I mean, it doesn't mean I don't love it and still enjoy playing it and all that stuff.
No, I mean, it's a separate issue, man. You got to eat
like,
and
I am not Wynton Marsalis. I'm not Branford Marsalis.
Right.
And even if I were, Wynton and Branford have always, or at least Wynton, I think Branford's been cooler about it, but Wynton is certainly even criticized his own brother for doing other things. And his own brother, I think Branford is now teaching at Duke.
Okay.
Which is not
I didn't know that.
ECU.
Yeah.
So I often wonder, I wonder if Branford and Carroll, that bass player, ever play together, down in North Carolina.
Oh, your old teacher, yeah.
Yeah. So, but it's just what it is, man. I mean, you can't, it's sort of if you can't beat them, join them mentality, but it's not really.
No, but you got to keep look, man. What did we talk about before that we started rolling, right? So you got your session player,
right?
You play. You have several bands of your own. Okay, you do tracks. You made a record with Brian, and now on the back of that, you're going to set up this YouTube channel, Crazy People Jam Party.
Mm-hmm.
You got to be doing and something from that, which neither one of us knows today. Right. Something will come from that.
Well, that certainly is our hope. Yeah. I mean, what I try to do, and I think Brian would be with me on this, we're trying to find a way to merge art and commerce without having to sacrifice either one. Now, granted, there's going to have to be a compromise on both ends. There's going to have to be some compromise. Like, I can't make a record that sounds like Yoko Ono, and it's nothing against Yoko. I'm just saying it's music, and and it's art, being what it is, she is staying true to her art. It's probably not going to sell 1 million copies.
Right.
And at the same, talking about that in the same way, if, I want to sell 2 million copies of something, am I going to have to really sacrifice this art side of it? And so that's what we're trying to do. And yeah, my career, as you said, at this point has really groomed me for sessions. So that's been a good way that I can make money.
Absolutely.
As I still continue to pursue the art. And that's what Brian and I did. Initially we started writing tunes because we were going to do a clinic together in Indiana. It's called PASIC. And we were sort of not headlining, but we were on the main day. So we did a rhythm section masterclass.
Yeah.
Clinic for a bunch of drummers, explaining how drums and bass work together. Because, a lot of those clinics, and I love them, but the drummers will just get up there and they'll play and they'll kill it, and they will kill it. It's awesome. But, it doesn't really give you necessarily an idea of how to get a career happening.
Sure.
Seeing someone play a drum solo, I love to see it. It's all inspiring, and it's something I dig, but I also know, how many times have I been hired directly to play a drum solo?
To be a drum solo, yeah, zero probably. We're very close to zero.
A few clinics, but that's it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm just looking at the numbers, and I'm not. So I think the session thing's been a good way to allow me to pursue the art. And then the art now is what he and I have done together. We've created a record, but we did it with multiple purposes. One was to be able to write and record our own music that we were proud of. We felt we've accomplished that. Then the next goal was to have something to sell. at
And,
shows.
and it's a business card also, man. It's like,
Exactly.
instead of most people give over a business card, you can say, hey man, here's my CD.
Exactly. So it sounds good. For
Right.
me, it showcases the studio.
Yeah.
Uh, for us both, as we recorded it, we videoed it. So now we have videos of
That's
the
cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, and we're also, I'm sure you in Florida, especially there, know Brad over at True Fire.
Yeah. Right.
So we're talking with Brad and those guys, and Robben's turned us onto them, and we want to try
Oh,
to
cool.
make a whole course and a whole thing, but it's a lot of work. And when Brian and I are both busy, it gets backburnered, and we're really trying to bring that to the front now. And in doing so, we'll have video, we'll have a record, we'll have transcriptions of what we've played. So that's all pretty standard.
That's really cool.
But we'll also have it where people can have a play along minus music minus, because we've got all the stems for the record. So that's another way to generate income off the record. And then we can use it as a calling card for clinics. And a lot of people will make a record and it'll be beautiful and it'll be a work of art and they'll spend so much time on it and they'll get it out and they'll have a CD release. Those are all great things. That's the first step.
Yeah.
So then what?
Right. You guys have thought this through and you're thinking, how can I leverage this asset I now have?
Exactly. Because I'm trying to really, we as artists think as artists, and it's beautiful. And like the first inclination after you finish a record is, okay, let's start writing for the second one.
Right.
And Brian and I have done that, but we also realize that, okay, how do I find a way to monetize? How do I find a way to let this be an asset? So that's kind of where we are.
And the good thing is, a lot of times, like I had a conversation with my wife the other week. I was telling her something I'm going to do. She goes, do you think that'll work? I said, I have no idea, but I know if I don't do it, it certainly won't. I mean, most of the shit you do, it doesn't work. But if you get 3 out of 10, they usually work really well. So the other 7 that are misses, it's like, the old baseball analogy, the guy who's hitting 300s. Excellent.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the thing is, like if I play a gig now and I play a fill or something, I'm like, oh, wow, that was cool. I got to remember that. If I can get one of those a gig,
yeah,
and I play enough gigs, then all of a sudden I will have a cool vocabulary. Like, oh, I've been doing that lately. I'll do it again. But there is no substitution for effort. And I think, talent is great and it's vital and it's important, but you will see it 9 times out of 10, the guy that puts in the effort or the girl, they're going to be the ones
that, they get the movement.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, you still have to do it. And that we are in a culture of where somebody will say, I'm a drummer because I own a drum set, or I'm a guitarist because I own a guitar. And no, man, you got to put the work in. And there's some phenomenal young people coming up that, they've seen all the YouTube videos and they've copped them. And it's impressive what's going on. And those people have put in the effort. Now, I can't say that they've necessarily developed a voice or become a unique figure musically.
That's what Lee was talking to. It's funny enough, when he had this conversation, he was referring to, man, this sounds great on the internet, but you're not going to work with this.
Well, and that's certainly part of it. And, people have found out a way to sit in their bedroom and monetize. Like that guy, Davey 405. That bass
is he a drummer? Oh, he's a bass player?
Bass player. I just learned about him. Actually from Britt. I didn't even know.
From Tom Britt?
No, from Britt, my wife. Britt.
Oh, Britt, your wife. Okay.
Yeah, but it's just like he's this bass player that makes these little funny comments and like has bass solo challenges and stuff. But he's got like 4 million viewers or subscribers. So This guy is making money in his bedroom. And who's to argue with that?
No one.
If it's working. But for me, I want to engage and play music with people. I want it to be still about music.
Sure.
And serving the music. And I'm saying that he's not Southern, Southern coming out.
Bless his heart.
Bless his heart. But he is. Bless my heart. I mean, he's freaking money. And he's cool. He's good. He's, I understand. But I think
if you want to use music as a connection,
Yeah.
You got to take it beyond that if you want to connect with
Right. If
others
you want to move people through art,
and
as
move
opposed,
yourself.
yeah, exactly. And I want to both be able to move people through art and entertain people through art. I'm more on the movement side
Yeah, sure.
than the entertainment side. Some people are heavily into the entertainment side. That's fine.
Yeah,
It's just not really where I hitch my wagon.
totally
Um,
get it, man.
so I mean, I think all those things, uh, with regard to what we're doing, we have a multifaceted plan. So to give it the best chance of success, it's like fertilizing the plant and watering it every day, as opposed to just watering it every day. We're trying to find different angles to make things work. And that sort of leads me. Did you ask about the YouTube channel?
No, but we can talk about it.
Yeah. So we're in the fledgling stages, but that's another idea. Sort of where Brian and I are the rhythm section behind. Um,
Find some killer guitar players,
yeah, lots of killer and just
keyboards.
yeah. So I'm sure we'll probably have. Hopefully, if they're into it and want to do it, and they'll be playing their own music, we'll just have like a brief interview, talk about the song, talk about where they're at, and then shoot the session live in the studio. And
That's
it's a
cool.
live session, and then we multi-track it, so they leave with a great mix and a video, and they can choose to share it or not. But either way, it's a way to. We're looking for win-wins and a symbiotic way to bring people together and let their art move forward.
Absolutely, man. That's great. I mean, you got to do a bunch of things, man. I give you credit. You're a hustler, and you got to be in this business.
I hate to say it, in this environment, the days of just sitting back and letting things happen, not really going to happen.
No, because plus there's too many other guys. If you're not moving, they are.
Yeah.
Or they should be.
A competitive nature, certainly.
Hey, I want to mention some of the artists you've played with, and tell me, how'd you actually get the gig, and if there's a funny, cool, or interesting story about working with them.
Sure.
Let's start with Chuck D.
Well, Chuck, strangely enough, my buddy who I went to ECU with,
The guy who got in trouble with the heroin, went down, was using heroin.
Oh, no, sorry. He was in that community, but this was another guy. He stayed clean. He and I moved into an apartment near Manhattan School together. He had been living in sort of a dorm situation there, and then we got an apartment at 125th and Broad. And he was there about a year before I was. So he was out of school as I was still in school, but we were roommates. And then he was sort of playing in this funk band with this guy who played bass and was a producer and still is. And he started working some with Chuck D. So that's sort of the way the connection happened. I first played in these funk bands with this guy. And that was about the time I decided, like, man, there are a lot of angry jazz musicians here. I think
there's a lot of angry people in New York in general.
I think I'm going to go over here for a minute. And, it could have been me. I don't know. But
it probably wasn't you.
I just felt like there was a lot of I didn't want music to be this unpleasant experience.
So you know what I read one time? Sorry, I don't cut you off, but it reminded me that I read, how they say New York is the city that never sleeps?
Yeah.
I read, I think in a Jonathan Lethem book, he goes, no, it's the city that never shuts up.
Yeah. You got that right. Yeah. Everybody's on their guard, and they're so I just describe it as being on top of the beat. Everybody's on top of the beat. And that's why the jazz thing out of New York is so intense, because it's it is their life experience. You're hearing it come out. And that's why I think it is the jazz capital of the world. Likewise, if the band, or let's say the Meters, I couldn't see the Meters being a New York band.
No, too nice.
But I think, that being said, that I had this relationship with the guy that played bass, and eventually he got me into those scenes, and but even then, we did a record with Confrontation Camp, and it was released on a label. I can't remember which label, but it was a reasonably established label. but even to get that release, you know, they listened to the record, the label did, and then they wanted the band to play on several tracks. So,
was this Chuck? Was this him? Was he rapping here, or was
at the time it was Chuck and Professor Griff from Public Enemy?
Okay.
Plus a band of a guy. His name's Brian Hardgrove, but we called him Hard Groove. So he was Hard Groove, and this guitarist Jafar Muhammad, and this other guy Kyle Jason. So it was sort of like three guys up front. And they would all just, the goal was to take on like social issues. That's the whole meaning of the name, Confrontation Camp.
Okay. So
they would do it through song. And actually a couple of tracks I remember seeing, like one got in a Steven Seagal movie, and every now and then they were very gracious and gave us writing credit on the songs.
Wow.
To some degree.
That's really cool.
On the music side. So it was straight up. And I'll still get BMI checks every now and again for this movie. I forget what it's called. It's some Steven Seagal movie. But one of the songs was in that. And we had a couple of those bands together. The next one was the Fine Arts Militia, and we played Radio City Music Hall.
Did you?
Yeah, with Martin Scorsese was actually the executive director. Yeah, Chuck was great. They were always very cool with me. And we had a couple bands after that. Fine Arts Militia, where we played Radio City. Martin Scorsese executive directed this thing. Also, I think was directed by Antoine Fuqua.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which was, and Antoine early on did a couple of videos that we had in Confrontation Camp. I remember we shot a video on the Boston Commons for a video we had called Break the Law, I think was called. It was BRAKE, the law, like, you know, involving like
stop the
related, you know, police matters that went wrong.
Yeah.
From the perspective of, you know, that the wrongfully accused. So
is that weird? Was that weird for you being in that scene, coming from, not as a musician, but coming from what I'm assuming is conservative North Carolina?
Well, it would seem that way. And I guess all I can say is that
not weird for you personally, you know what I'm saying? Like, because you're a musician, just like the thought of, man, this is where I grew up.
Like, how did this happen? I mean, the thing is, I guess,
yeah, right. Like,
speaking, where I grew up was like, when we went to school, it was probably 40% African American, 40% white or Caucasian.
Right.
Know? Some Latino, some. Like I had a few Vietnamese friends, so there were some Asian folks, but it was mostly black and white.
So it's pretty
coexisted.
Yeah.
So this was not a strange thing for me to be in a band. It's funny, in high school, and hopefully this isn't gonna, you have to understand this in the right way. We were in a band, and it was equal amounts of white people and black people.
Sure.
So we called it Oreo.
Yeah, which was normal for, yeah.
Yeah, so, but, you know, that was but like, we didn't look at that. We were looked at that as an observation. And it was
like, oh, that's a cool name. Half of us are white, half of us are, there's
but
no like racial impetus.
Like, I'll say that in New York to people like, oh, that's racist. I'm like, well, dude, you have to understand, we all grew up together. We were all in the community together. Yeah. This was more like saying your hair is blue and your hair is pink. You know, it really it wasn't a judgment call in either way.
Yeah, that's really weird, because I grew up in New York.
I never really encountered. There was always some amount of racism.
Sure.
In the South, and I understood that, and I know that my experience is going to be different from a person of color's experience.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
That being said, there was even a movie about it. It was called The Free State of Jones, and it's just talking about this area in the South. I think Matthew McConaughey, whether you like him or not, starred in the movie, but I also know it because there were some educational books written about it.
Interesting.
because Britt had to read the book on tape. So that was her gigs. But I started learning about it that just in this area of the South, not necessarily the Deep South, people sort of coexisted. And there was like, yeah, of course there was, historically speaking, there would have been slavery, but none of my ancestors, they were too poor to own slaves. So they were all like sharecropping. You know, so it's a different kind of take on race. Now, that's not to say you get in the hills of North Carolina, there's some backwards people.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and there's obviously still many racial divides happening. That being said, for whatever reason, where I grew up, the schools I attended, the college, it was racially diverse. And I started encountering that more so. It was strange when I moved to New York.
You're not the first.
Than I did when I lived in the South.
I have had several people tell me that they found more racism in New York than where they grew up. You're definitely not the first person to tell me that.
It doesn't, you know, now I understand there are some places in the Deep South that are going to be different, but all I can speak to is from my experience and where I came from. And like this teacher that I'm telling you about that played with Maceo, you know, he was a huge influence on me. He's African American.
Yeah.
A lot of my teachers in high school were. So I guess for me, yeah, it's strange to think of me being in this small town and now playing with this sort of like militant,
militant rap band.
You know, like you know, conscious changing rap music as opposed to like gangsta or some other kind of subject matter. You know, like really focused on making social change.
Sure.
From the perspective of an African American. That being said, yeah. And I even had my buddy in the band ask me like, well, man, you know, I noticed you were the only white person in that environment. Did that feel weird for you? And I was like, well, not really. You know, because I grew up playing in bands where the music that I was drawn towards was predominantly Black music.
Right. Soul, funk,
jazz.
Yeah.
So who's going to be playing this music?
Sure.
Not going to be a lot of like
kids from Long Island.
White people. I mean, I hate to say it, but that's just what it is.
No, so, guys who grew up in Suffolk County are not really like digging on that.
Yeah. So it's just like, you know, it wasn't as strange as people might think it would have been for me. I mean, at the same time, there's no denying the white elephant in the room.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
I mean, you know, and yeah, I am the only white guy, but I was just cool about it. They were cool about it. We were just, as far as I know, existing as people.
Yeah, yeah, playing music together. Yeah.
And that's one thing music's always done. Like when I would work with the producer, James Stroud, here, you know, and he played on a lot of those early records. Like he told me his story about the Bob Seger record. They were recording old time rock and roll, and this black cat from Memphis was coming up, songwriter, and this is a funny story to me. And he told the guy, some guy's like, listen, man, if you can give me a ride to the studio, which was like 2 or 3 hours away, said, I'll give you half of the song. It's like for this some kid named Bob or something. But I tell you, you know, you get something. He wrote it. Obviously, it's a huge hit for Bob Seger, but the driver got half of that.
Holy crap.
But legit. James tell me stories, and still I love hanging out with James at sessions and stuff, because he'll tell me stories about how they made these records and the danger they had because they were consorting with people of color.
Wow.
Especially at that time, you know, and he's like the drummer on Mr. Big Stuff, a lot of those early soul records, you know. He's done a ton of record work, you know, as a drummer. And it's awesome. So he would tell me about those, you know, the way that they would work and some of the challenges, racially speaking. But yeah, music, certainly among musicians, will sort of bridge those divides.
Yeah, as it should.
You know, like we all want to play, and I just want to get on this groove, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, what do we do, you know?
And any funny stories or interesting stories with the Chuck D experience?
Yeah, a couple. I'll tell you a couple. This is just funny. And it's here again, it's just highlighting differences and not trying to make a comment either way. But like we would rehearse at his place in Baldwin, Long Island.
That's where he's from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I played basketball as a kid, but I was terrible. I was the last. Even my best friend at the time was picking people for teams, and I was still the last person to get picked. And he said, I guess we'll take you. That's the way it was in elementary school. So not really. And I see videos of me playing basketball, and I look ridiculous. I look like this pigeon-toed, weird lumbering thing going down the court, trying to get the ball and like half aggressively, so it was terrible. But we played basketball, and it was just the epitome of white men can't jump. It's like,
as a team, you guys played basketball.
Yeah, it's just that was just getting killed. And I think about those Charlie Murphy stories on Dave Chappelle, where he's like playing basketball with Prince, and like Prince can ball. Charlie's saying this, and yeah. So I just felt like I didn't have that. Even though I thought I had played basketball, it was pretty terrible.
New York basketball is really aggressive too, man.
Yeah, man. I played in like Cancun. I don't know. I was on a gig like a decade or so ago. I'm like, this is killing me. Like we used to do this every afternoon as a kid. I mean, I sucked, but I wanted to be better. But I just was terrible. But still, the exercise was amazing.
Yeah.
I was like, man, screw this. I'm not doing this. I'm gonna eat. But another time we were playing a gig at Hammerstein Ballroom.
Oh, wow. It's a pretty big place to play in New York City.
Yeah. And I forget what it was for. We did several things that were sort of politically directed. One was the shadow conventions. Ben from Ben and Jerry's, I can't remember his full name right now, but it was Ben from Ben and Jerry's. Ben Sokol, maybe? I'm not sure. Maybe I'm confusing it. But he put on these conventions that were meant to shadow the conventions in an election. So you'd have the Republican one or you'd have the Democratic one. Then they would have the shadow convention.
Okay.
They're supposed to be talking about other issues. So we played a few of those, and I don't know if this was part of that. I do remember at the time I overheard a conversation in the green room between Al Franken and Michael Moore. They were sitting together.
That's funny.
And like this was a whole bill of people. So I think like maybe Moby or Beck. There were just a couple different people on the bill, and we were one of the bands. But I remember hearing Michael Moore and Al Franken talking. And at the time, this was before Al Franken was still a comedian. This was before he got into
before he became a senator.
Yeah. Oh, wait.
Okay.
And he was sitting there talking to Michael Moore, and he was like, and as they had that Air America show, I think, for a minute.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, and Chuck D was on that, I think.
He might have been, and I think Janine Garofalo.
Yeah.
A couple of politically minded actors were on that show. But anyway, and I guess musicians if Chuck was on it. But I just remember, it was funny because he was saying, "Yeah, I think I'll start a show called the O'Franken Factor." With regard to O'Reilly Factor. And I guess eventually he did go to Air America. But on that particular gig, I wasn't feeling too well. I had a cold or something. So Chuck and I went across the street, and he was real nice. He bought me some chicken soup. We just sat there.
That's nice, man.
We sat there and ate. He's like, yeah, man, you'll feel better. So, Chuck D has bought me a bowl of chicken noodles.
That's really cool. Yeah, that's an unusual experience.
It was, and I can't remember. There were some other funny ones, but it was a good experience for me, man. I mean, people, they will always say, "What was that like?" Of course, referring to being the only white guy. Just in general, like you're saying, being from a small town into this thing. Oh, the other funny thing is, I remember we were going to play a show at Tramps in New York.
Yeah.
And we were trying to figure out what to wear, and they eventually.
All these places are gone, man.
Yeah, they are. I mean, I was thinking about the other night. I got to see Little Feat at Tramps.
Yeah.
Like with Richie on drums. So, I just thought about all those great experiences I had, and even Sounds of Brazil. I used to see Michelle Camilo play there. I remember seeing John Schofield at a place called the Five Spot, which
Yeah,
became
it's
a
gone, I
restaurant.
think.
And I used to play the Bottom Line. Like I did some gigs there with different.
That's gone.
That's gone. NYU bought it. The Village Gate became a CVS. Visiones, which was a jazz club, became this late
Village
night.
Gate isn't Village Gate still there in some other format?
Sign is.
What's that?
The sign is.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of those places when I first moved there.
I'm thinking of the Vanguard. Sorry.
Vanguard, thankfully, is.
Yeah, it's still there. That's what I was thinking of.
There. And so is Blue Note.
Yeah.
Blue Note's more of a world type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because they had some in Hawaii and then, of course, in Japan. And I've played those with Robben. I still never did play the Blue Note in New York, and that was kind of a bummer, but maybe one day.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm trying to think. But yeah, the other thing was we were playing at Tramps, and we were talking about what to wear, and we eventually decided on these sort of flight suits. They were like blue because we were like having these matching things. Because at first we were thinking about camouflage and camouflage shorts and stuff. And the thing is, like when those guys would put it on, they looked militant, and they looked, and I just looked like I was going hunting. It's stupid.
Yeah. Well, because they'd march and they would have like this precision Swiss clock alignment of all their movements. And those guys are all in like pretty good shape, and they had the hats on and everything.
Exactly. Who brought Duck Dynasty here? So,
right.
So, speaking of which, on the other side, I've been on Duck Dynasty. I had I had some friends that wrote a show that I was actually in New York. I played the part of a drummer who couldn't speak on stage, and then off stage I played the drums in the pit. This was an off-Broadway show called Once Around the Sun.
And this was back when you were in school.
Yeah, this was when I was living in New York. So this
after school when you lived in the city.
Yeah, mid 2000s. So they were
wow.
And it was supposed to be a musical about music. That was sort of the tagline, and it was cool. Actually, the first song written on it was called "It's All Music," and it sort of underscored the struggle of these musicians in the city and what they're doing, and the songs were good. And I just remember that first title came about because one of the co-writers of the musical was hanging out with Paul McCartney. He had a kid that was Paul McCartney's kid's age at the time, and they would be in the park together. I don't know if it was Gramercy Park or wherever. So they eventually kind of became friends. And one day Paul McCartney asked him, he's like, "So what do you do for a living?" He says, "Well, I'm a bass player." And Paul McCartney says, "You can make a living doing that?" Which is funny.
That's really funny.
There's some wit there, but there's some truth there too.
From the world's most famous bass player.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But full well knowing that if he hadn't probably been the bass player in this band,
right,
how difficult it could have been. And they did a couple of things, like they went on his sailboat a couple times, and so they got to know each other. But basically, that's Paul McCartney's line.
Was that Neil Jason by any chance?
No, his name is Stephen Morris.
Okay.
He and his twin brother Robert and a friend of mine, Joe Shane, wrote the musical.
Okay.
And Joe's wife at the time wrote the book, and she's also been an actress for a long time. But we were all friends, but at the same time, we were also, they were writing musicals for a while. They wrote another one for Whoopi Goldberg, and getting a musical to succeed on Broadway is like winning the lottery.
There's a lot of odds, and there's a lot of money. You need a lot of money to fund that thing.
Exactly. And I just saw them going through it because they were my friends as well. But I did get a chance to act, and play drums in that. But what I was going to say is Paul McCartney actually told him, he said, "Well, it's all music, man." Meaning that whether you're doing a musical, because they were talking about at the time, they had a Lennon musical.
Oh, so that's how you got the title, "It's All Music."
Yeah.
That's
for
cool.
one of the songs. So, there was a larger point to that, but they at some point, after writing several shows, they somehow got involved in writing one for the Duck Dynasty folks.
Okay.
And they wrote one. premiered in Vegas. It didn't do well, but one weekend I was hanging out down in West Monroe, Louisiana with the Duck Dynasty people.
That's funny, man.
And
what a contrast. So you're going from Public Enemy to Duck Dynasty. That's
exactly.
honestly, that's kind of cool.
It is.
And you have that opportunity to see that many different slices of the world. Because listen, even if whether you agree, disagree, it doesn't matter. You're going to learn something.
Yeah, you're going to learn something about the way the different sides of the polarization work.
Yeah, yeah. And hopefully,
I'm not saying that there's no disdain on either side of that for the other party. I mean, there might be, and I'm not aware of it. But what I'm saying is that just to really find the common denominators of what makes people work and what they're But definitely two completely different experiences. I'm hanging out in Chuck D's house over here. I'm hanging out in Willie Robertson's house over here.
Yeah, it's wild.
And, I'm playing Radio City with Chuck D and this Fine Arts Militia thing when we're doing an anti-war song, with Martin Scorsese directing. Then over here I'm playing the Opry with somebody else. So I think it's all been a great experience, and I wouldn't trade.
It's awesome. Yeah. It's wonderful, man.
Yeah, because I think it rounds me out as a human being.
Totally. And you get to be, for me anyway, I know even if I don't agree with somebody, it makes it a little more empathetic. For
sure. And I think in this culture, especially where we are now as a country, politically, and we very much, and with social media, we very much retreated to our corners and our echo chambers, and we're not really listening to the other side.
Yeah.
And I think that you have to make progress. I think you at least have to be able to understand why somebody's coming from that position, even if you don't agree with it. And then you can better present your argument of why you think it should go a different way without, insulting them or, belittling their argument. So for a while I was involved in politics online, and, where the election was coming up, and since then I've just checked out, and I really believe, that's what it's become. It's just become this echo chamber.
It's noise. Yeah.
And if you really want to make appreciable change, do it through your art, or go out and vote, or work for a political campaign.
Work.
Yeah.
Right.
It still has to be work. It just can't be all this outrage and,
Well, no one pays attention to shouting anyway. Yeah. So, I mean,
I have trouble. Yeah.
I had a guy come over to me in the gym one day. I literally just finished doing a set of shoulders, and he says, "Who are you voting for?" And I told him, and he goes, "How the hell can you do that?" I'm looking at him. I said, "Are you fucking serious, man? I'm in the gym. Like, do you think, let's say I'm interested in your conversation. Do you think like in the next 30 seconds between my next set, like you're going to make movement here with anybody?" I'm like, I come here to relax.
Exactly. And that, listen, I think it's important to speak up when you find something is wrong. Like after this past election, I did see some racists parading through North Carolina, and they had like rebel flags, and they were shouting racial epithets, and they were going through different communities. So they were basically racist on parade. And I just never seen that before in my lifetime. Now, of course, we had Selma, and we had all kinds of racial tension in the 60s, and it's always been there with an undercurrent. But I just hadn't seen it that blatantly displayed. So I said something about it on social media, and then I don't know if it was like bots or whatever, but I just got tons of comments, and I'm thinking I had to say this. And then I had some Black friends message me and say, "Man, thank you for doing that. Thank you for at least standing up and saying what you got to say, to do the right thing." It's not us versus them thing. It's just,
it's just being a human,
as a race.
That's a human.
Make sure that we are doing right by ourselves, for one another. So that is when I figure, but like the daily, and I see it every day. People, like, they make it their identity of posting about something outrageous, and I can't do it. I can't do it anymore.
I had a guitar player on the show. His name is Diego Garcia. Goes by Twangero. He's literally of one of the most interesting and creative guitar players I've been exposed to that I didn't know before.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing player, really sweet guy. He's from Spain. The interview he did was his first interview he ever spoke English that much, and so it was a big thing for him.
Yeah.
Really nice guy. And the same thing happened on Instagram. He made a post. He said he does a lot of work out in California, and he goes, I got refused entry into a restaurant today. I was with a couple of my friends because I was Spanish. And I just said, man, I am fucking embarrassed that this happened to you you're visiting America. I said,
Right.
I'm so sorry that you had to deal with that. It is really embarrassing as a human being that another human being would do that to you. And nothing to do with race, like my race, or it was just, that's like what you just talking. That's embarrassing, man.
And like, that's the way, I mean, like in the environment in which I grew up, it was much more seeing people as people than people, of a certain race, which is which is a funny term anyway, because it's like we can say ethnicity, but we're all the human race. I mean, so yeah, and that's obvious, but still, these are the terms we use. But yeah, I think that's not what America should be about right now. And I think music and this experience of being in these different people's houses has shown me the common denominators, and I'm going to choose to focus on them and not the differences that are problematic. It doesn't mean I'm going to ignore them or not address them if need be, but I'm just saying I'm really trying to find a way to move forward with music, with society. That's what I would like for us to be able to do, and not focus on these, understand and be informed by the problematic eras, but not at the same time just continually focus on them and not try to find solutions. And I think that to me is abhorrent, in this day and age. But it's kind of like music. It's like, and this informs me about the way I look at life too, but you can find a shortcut to make money. You can find something outrageous or shocking to do to bring people into your fold. And you can find some ways to entertain them. And this has certainly happened in politics, but at the end of the day, I have to ask myself, is this moving the human race and art forward? Or are we regressing?
Yeah.
Digressing. So that's kind of the way I look at that. Like even politically, it's like that shouldn't be happening now. That to me is like, we've already dealt with that. We've gone through the 8-track era of our recording process.
Yeah.
Now, and there would be people right now that'll argue, oh, they sounded better. In some ways they did. Some ways tape did sound better. But I'm just saying, like, let's find ways to move forward and make a better future. It's funny because, and I certainly don't want to get on a huge subject of race and politics, but like we were supposed to do a guitar thing with Robben. He was going to do a guitar dojo, and it was with Annie DeFranco.
Oh, cool.
Who, I mean, I've done shows with her and Chuck at Berkeley, California.
Right. Sure, right. I know.
I mean, it's like, this is probably as liberal as you could get.
Yeah, that's the epicenter of liberalism, I would say, in the country.
She would be, but she had chosen this place in New Orleans, and it was an explantation. And basically, somebody just said, "I'm so disappointed in you for choosing this plantation." And so eventually, in a nutshell, the whole show got canceled.
Wow.
We didn't do the dojo there. And she didn't have like this guitar weekend there because it was at the location of this plantation. And I have to be sensitive and understand that that's very difficult for a lot of people. It's very difficult for me, to think about what went on there, and the way it went on. And I understand that side of the argument. At the same time, do we have an opportunity to change that?
Yeah, could it have been looked at as, hey, this is a plantation at one time that kept place. Now it's a place that's open and we're unifying.
Look how empowered we are.
Yeah, this isn't.
Era never has that power over us again, and that's what I'm hoping we can do.
Yeah.
In this country, certainly, but I guess what I mean is, it's like I want to take these opportunities and do something good with them, rather than to try to focus. And I guess I look at that with the jazz scene. There's some people that are like, they'll be like, hey man, that's not what jazz is supposed to be. Jazz is supposed to be this and this and this, and this is the way it was, and this is the way it is, and this is the way it should be done. In a preservationist way, I agree with that. But at the same time, if those guys at that time had thought that way,
jazz would never be around.
It would not exist.
Yeah.
So I'm just, and I hope I'm being very sensitive to the fact that plantations were obviously awful things. Of
course.
And the treatment of people that were enslaved there, it's an awful thing.
Of course.
I guess I'm just thinking, I'm looking at this battlefield and I'm saying, how do we turn this into a park? Or how do we plant flowers here and make this a better place? Because obviously what happened, we don't want it to happen again. But, it's hard to know. It honestly is. And I even think I saw the World Trade Center Memorial last year for the first time. And I was there on 9/11. So I saw it happen. I saw it with my own eyes. I saw it come down. And I was in Brooklyn. I was across the river. And then the months after that, I dealt with that, just dealing with the repercussions of that. So I finally got to a point where I felt good enough about going. And I understand that people like, this is holy ground. This is where our people have died. You can't just pave over it and, put up another building. At the same time, I'm glad they did the memorial. I'm glad they honored it, but I'm glad they're doing something good with that area, because it was like a void. It was terrible to go down there and see a big hole in the ground. So for me, as a person who kind of lived through it, yeah, I think that's the way we have to, that's the way I think we move forward. Yeah.
Wow. I want to ask you about one more artist that you worked with, Warren Haynes, man. He's one of my favorite players.
Warren was, it was more like a guest appearance on one of Robben's records. So
Warren came in and did a guest appearance.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So that was cool working with him in that context. He played some solos and stuff. And then he sat in with us a couple times out on the road. We were in Europe. And
Government Mule happened to be there at the same time?
Yeah, they were, now that I think about it. And we were doing it was different. It was this weird complex, man. Europe has a completely different way of looking at music. Like, they had this whole complex just for music. So they had different rooms with different stages, I guess because of the weather. I can't remember where we were. But it was just kind of awesome to think they have a stadium kind of dedicated for music or events or something. But they were in one room, we were in the other, and he came over and sat in a couple times. So,
did you get to talk with him at all?
Only briefly, honestly.
Yeah.
But I've seen Government Mule there, and I've seen him, I think, in New York a couple times. It's always
I've seen him I saw him at the Beacon, the run, the New Year's Eve run. That was great.
Right.
That was really cool. What are the top 3 experiences you've had musically? Just your knee-jerk reaction to that.
Well, obviously that Barack Obama inauguration was huge. And I'm sure some people will disagree with me, and that's fine, but I really admired him as a president. I thought he was, there was a lot of controversy surrounding him from the other side, but, he kind of kept his nose clean as far as I can tell, throughout his presidency. And he was a constitutional scholar. I think he was intelligent, is intelligent, and he's not extreme. He's not nearly as extreme as people make him out to be. So I was proud to be there for that. I was proud to be there for the first African-American elected president, even though technically, he's biracial. But that's fine. That still met, the requirement for that being historical. And it was mainly, so that was a big part of it. And then it was just the stars that came out to support him on that gig. So that,
You backed up some serious people.
Stevie Wonder, I know so much of his music. I've transcribed a lot of his music for my funk band. So that was probably the highlight for me, is playing with Stevie Wonder, because I've heard him all my life. And then Sting also the same way. It was, just here's somebody I've listened to all my life, from the Police to like his later records. And then that is in no way to diminish like Mariah Carey, Beyonce, Shakira, Alicia Keys, Faith Hill and Tim McGraw, who eventually I ended up playing on a record with them. I did one of their records a few years later.
As a session player in Nashville.
But it was just, this huge amassing of talent. And honestly, it felt like great vibes to me. Like Queen Latifah was up above the drums. And so I was playing that night, and we would take like commercial breaks or something, because it was live. That's the other thing.
Oh, wow. Who's playing bass at that gig?
His name was Artie Reynolds. And Artie and Ray Chu is the director. Ray first worked the Apollo up in Harlem, where I was living for a while, did shows there. And then eventually he got tied into some other gigs. So like I've played Carnegie Hall with Ray Chu and Artie. We did a tribute to Motown. So that was
that's cool. So you've played with these guys before.
Yeah. And then I'd also, and like Anita Baker and Dennis Edwards and Paul Schaefer and, I can't remember who was on.
Is that how you got the gig? Because you knew Ray?
Yeah, well, actually, I got the gig. And here again, it's like I had a good buddy I was in a wedding band with. And he's now out with Nile Rodgers. He's producing with him and producing some of his stuff and working with Nile. But he was working with Ray. And I met him in a wedding band in New York. We were both in the same sort of club date office. And his name's Russell Graham, and he's just an excellent musician, like went to Harvard, and, is on top of it. And he recommended me to Ray, because we did these Democratic National Convention it was just before that 2008 election. So we did those. And, got to hear everybody speak. And that's places where I worked with people like Melissa Etheridge or John Legend. Also, I worked with John Legend here in Nashville. He did something for the BMI Awards last year, and we were doing a tribute to Steve Cropper.
Okay.
So it was great to be able to play like Dock of the Bay with Steve Cropper sitting there and John Legend singing it. Kenny Greenberg.
Okay. Yeah,
was playing guitar, and Dave Rowe was playing bass. And
Dave Rowe is awesome.
Yeah, I just played with him Saturday. He's great.
He's the funniest. Yeah. He's beyond funny.
He's a hysterical cat, man. And like he's got a decorated career. Johnny Cash and like Jerry Reed was his father-in-law.
Yeah.
It's just crazy, but anyway, we played all that stuff with Ray there, and then they wanted the same band for the inauguration. So
that's cool, man.
That's how that all happened. And then like I just remember like people like I'd run into Lucy Liu in the elevator, or Denzel Washington, who I really like him as an actor.
Yeah, he's a great actor, man.
So I just enjoyed kind of for the evening hanging out with those folks. And then Queen Latifah was up in the up above the drums, and she said, "Y'all sound good," it's just funny. And then Nick Cannon was over there being a DJ. It seemed like a weird dream, like a really nice, weird dream.
That's great, man.
Except it was, it was real. And
so the Obama inauguration is 1. What would be 2 and 3 best musical experiences?
Playing the Montreux Jazz Festival, the 50th anniversary with Robben, it was pretty incredible just to be part of that scene. And the country's so beautiful, and we were hanging out in like Cloud Knob's house, I think is his name, but he's the guy that put it on for so many years, and he just had this intense basement just full of records, like library stacks of records, and all this memorabilia in his house, and then like Smoke on the Water is written.
Yeah,
it's just the whole thing is just, again, it's a bit surreal, but it was just great to be a part of that. And I know that there are others, certainly that Lightning in the Bottle that I played with Chuck at Radio City, and that is the DVD we're on at the end of it, that Martin Scorsese executive directed, and then I guess Antoine Fuqua, and then but B.B. King was on that night, so I got to hang with him. Steve Jordan was a musical director who's one of my musical heroes.
Wow. And
Bonnie Raitt, Steven Tyler and Joe Perry were on the gig, Macy Gray.
God, they didn't mess with you. Played some serious celeb.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, that was what Steve was playing with all those. We just played at the end, but it was just to be a part of it.
Yeah.
Later on, I was on Steven Tyler's last record here. I did a couple tracks that he did here in Nashville. It was funny. They were supposed to be demo sessions, and then they got upgraded.
They made it. Dude, was that funny though? You're sitting there with Steven Tyler, because I'd be sitting.
Well, we're hearing his voice. He's not even in the studio. But I mean, the thing is, and I played on a track with him before, like when I was in that Chuck D.
Okay.
But they weren't related. Thankfully, that had nothing to do with the connection between the two different parties, which makes me feel good.
Yeah.
But in both cases, he wasn't in the studio, but I heard his voice. I'm like, yeah, that's that thing, and you get after it. But the funny thing is,
that would make me feel like I'm 17 listening to.
Oh yeah, it's amazing.
Or Night in the Ruts for the first time, or something.
Hear it, and you're like, okay, we're getting after this. This is going to be it. It's just funny because we thought it was kind of a demo, and then it got upgraded to master, and then it's just, I guess that's a lesson in that, treat something like it's going to be, as Nixon said, you can never be too careful when making recordings.
No, but yeah, you got to give 110%. You can't be thinking, oh, this is a demo, so let me half-ass it, because it may not be the demo, or your shitty performance may not make it.
And even like demos now, man, I mean, we do these things here in town called song slams. That's what we call them. But it's enabled people to get their songs cut, for a less amount of money, but get a good product.
Yeah.
But on a lot of those sessions, I only do one take. I mean, and it's the first take. So, and the thing is, I'm sitting here on this laptop programming a loop as they're listening down to the song. Then I'll give the engineer the loop. We only have 30 minutes to cut the whole thing.
Right.
So I'll get the loop done, give it to the engineer, hope the chart is right, ask them, did they make any changes, notate the changes in the chart, go in and play it down. It's often one pass. If I did miss something and the arrangement's weird, then I'll punch those points. But then I'm off to making percussion, and the guitarist has to do their overdubs. So, I mean, it's intense, man. I mean, but that's the mentality I go, like, this could be a record, and not that it's not a recording, but it could be something that
could be a big record. Yeah.
It's entirely possible. I mean, who thought that by driving, the guy to a Bob Seger guy's session, would end up taking care of him for the rest of his life.
Yeah, right. No, you just
driving a car. But yeah.
I'll give you half this song. That's great.
Yeah, that's what James tells me, and I have to think it's true. Yeah, absolutely.
Wes, what were some of the low points in your life, and how did you deal with them?
This is a good question, because I think people, including myself, tend to forget about them, and they can't gauge how far they've come because they get, caught up in over here and never realize where it was. I would say some of the low points, I've always been very lucky to do this for a living. And I never take that for granted. That's why I stay busy, and I try not to take any client or any gig for granted. I have to prioritize, obviously. That being said, when I was coming up, my parents were both teachers, as you said from the bio, and they both knew from the point I was setting up firewood that I really wanted to do this, but they also knew the challenges associated with it. And except for a couple times, like in the summers when I was going to Manhattan and I came back down to Raleigh to be there for the summer and hang with my ex-wife. We weren't married yet at the time, and that was tumultuous. But I remember trying to find, I'd been gone for a minute, so I kind of lost my gigs that were in Raleigh to some degree because they had to get other people to play them.
Sure.
And then this is Raleigh, North Carolina. So I came back down from New York for the summer. And I remember trying to think about practicing and getting it all together and woodshedding. And I had all these plans. And then I realized that, oh yeah, I have to get a job. So I worked as a temp. I remember one time I went, and I thought they would tell me, oh, well, this is temp work. You can just clean up around the construction site or whatever. I was like, well, I can do that. I'd go to the gym. I'll wear a pair of gloves. But I'm thinking also about my hands. But then these guys had me on a jackhammer. And I'm like, no. I just told them at lunch, I'm like, guys, I really respect what you do. This is hard work. This isn't for me. I'm peacing out. Thank you. Because they had me running the jackhammer. And I was like, this is not good for my hands.
Probably not good to be a drummer.
And then eventually I ended up working for this warehouse in Raleigh. And thankfully some gigs started to come in. I got calls for gigs, so I was able to make rent. And then I could kind of of course I was going back to school, so I wasn't going to be there for the summer, but they liked me there. I was, I guess, was a quick enough learner that I could figure out their system and I could understand routing and I could send trucks when their products were coming in. I guess it was like some kind of holding warehouse, like a hub for something. And I would track these orders. And I remember the one guy, the manager, coming in well, now, if you want to stay here for a gig. And I was just like, man, I appreciate it, but I'm going back to school. And they were nice people. But that was a low point, trying to find a way to make a living, not on music as I'm pursuing my career. And then when I moved to New York, here again after school, trying to make a living, just make a living and find my way. The only thing available to me,
right after you finish school.
Yeah. Now some people have a plan and they do it a certain way and it works out well for them. Like Keith Carlock, I heard, and Sean Pelton both saved up a bunch of money. And after school, they moved to New York and they just took all these different gigs and made their way up.
Yeah.
Lived off their savings. I didn't go that route. So I had to take gigs that were financially viable enough to pay rent in New York. And then when my ex-wife and I got divorced, now I'm living as a drummer single in New York.
Single, one income. Yeah, that's scary, man.
So it's but I still
having just gone through divorce, because whether it's amicable, not.
It sucks. Divorce.
There's no manual. It's just sucks.
And the thing is, it's like in New York, I'm trying to find an apartment. Luckily, the superintendent, Mr. $150, Mr. $150 said, I have an apartment in upstairs that's cheaper. We had a 1-bedroom in it. This was like a studio. And I moved there, and that's where I stayed because my room was in the basement. So it was like, I'm going to have to get a roommate. Where am I going to live? And the super was like, he just wanted that $150. So a month. He just was like, well, even if you want the room here and you live somewhere else, that's okay.
You can still come and practice.
Yeah.
For $150 a month. And
it was funny. I saw him pull up in a Mercedes one day. And I figured over the decade that I lived there, I probably paid him about $10,000 in cash every month.
And God knows how many other people he had on that program.
Yeah.
For other goods and services.
Pulled up in this Mercedes. I'm like, I bought half of that car. And it just, but here again, it's New York. And that was sort of a low point when I first moved there and got divorced. I'm playing in these wedding bands, and they're kind of awful. And then I'm auditioning for other bands, you know, that I'm finding in the scene, or the scene is Nashville, the Village Voice.
Yeah.
And
that's also gone.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of those were awful, you know, and just trying to find a way in. And then eventually it was funny. I was playing, this guy I played with in Raleigh was doing a children's record that he was going to call Peanut Butter and Jamming. And he had songs on it like Ghost Cat, like the scary spirit of a cat. And so we went in the studio, and I played on some of his other music that wasn't kids records, but we went in the studio, and it was Pilot Studios in Manhattan. And it was funny because the engineer there, I guess like Yoko had done some stuff, and they had some Beatles memorabilia, so I guess Lennon had worked there. So it was like my first big New York studio experience, and I'm recording this record, and one of the guys playing bass on it was a singer in this band, and a wedding band, and he knew of another wedding band that was looking for work. And I was like, okay, you know, because at the time I was in this wedding band where the gigs were questionable, and it was just like not paying very well. And one of the worst things I remember doing is I would get in my car in Bay Ridge on a Friday, and I would drive the Cross Island Expressway up to the LIE. Belt to the Cross Island to the LIE.
Those are all like the most crowded highways.
Oh, they're awful. And like the first time I went to the gig, me being Mr. Sit Down at the no standing zone, I didn't realize just how bad traffic was. So the first time I almost missed, it was playing on a boat. So anyway, I go to exit 36, and the guy that was on the gig sometimes there was Jeff Campbell. Do you know Jeff?
Jeffrey Lee Campbell. Yeah. Sting. Mm-hmm. He's a great guy, man. He's a North Carolina boy.
He is. So
yeah, Jeff, he's a really nice guy, man.
He's awesome. He's a great guitarist. And
yeah.
So Jeff was on this gig, and he was in this wedding office, and he liked being in the office because they had very few gigs, and that's what he wanted. But a couple times I'd see him on this boat, and Jeff told me a funny story. He said, you know, I've been hoping in no way it would be something he would disagree with, but maybe he's told you this, he's interviewed. He took a picture of that boat, and he framed it, and he put it in the pit with him at Mamma Mia or whatever show he was doing. And that boat was put there to remind him, be thankful for the gig you have. Like playing on Broadway, getting to do what you want to do, you know, because he hit the jackpot when he moved to New York.
9 months later.
Yeah, he hit the jackpot. Sting saw him playing a bar, hires him. He goes on a world tour. Like, that didn't happen for me. That doesn't happen.
That doesn't happen for anybody. He's I've had over 600 people.
Yeah, it just doesn't.
He's won.
He's won. He's the guy that won the lottery.
Right.
After you win the lottery, what do? So, you know.
Piss away all your money. That's what you do. That's what he did.
Well, yeah, I guess so. Maybe and you know, with the book, I'm sure he recounts all this, but
yeah.
I remember him telling me, yeah, man, I would get off the gig with that boat, you know, we'd play. And basically the bad part about it for me was we get on this boat, we take the boat down the Hudson, down the East River, and we would circle the Statue of Liberty, which was a mile or two from my house. So you feel like just jumping and swimming home.
Yeah.
Because you're playing, you know, and you're playing like.
And instead of the 2-hour commute you're going to have.
Yeah. And then you come back, you go back. And so, you know, I'm leaving at like 2 in the afternoon or 3 in the afternoon for this 6 o'clock gig. And I'm getting home at midnight, and it pays like $125.
Wow.
And it's just like, you know.
Wow.
And you do it. You do it because you also understand that this will get you other gigs with it all.
Well, plus the reality is sitting home, you're going to make zero. Even if you're netting 75 after expenses, that's
it was hard. And Jeff would almost recount it too and say, yeah, man, I would come back from playing a gig on the boat, you know, on the train or whatever. And I would walk past the Madison Square Garden where we sold it out 5 or 6 times with Sting. I go to my apartment, turn on the TV, and see myself playing with Sting on a rerun of like SNL or something. And it's just like, ah, but that's what the business is.
Yeah.
You know, so that for me, the boat was definitely a low point. And luckily when I'd done that session, this is how it all kind of comes into focus. When I'd done that session, this guy knew a guy from another wedding band and they hired me. So I started working from them, and that's where I met Britt.
Okay.
My wife. And then a few months, then she moved away. She moved to Nashville, and I was still in New York. So then a few months, like maybe a year or so after that, I got fired from that wedding band. Because
when she moved, had y'all stayed in contact?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So you were still like dating, just long distance.
Yeah. And then
that's got to be tough too, man.
That was crazy. I mean, I think about the 10 years that we were dating long distance and married long distance. I'm like, what was I thinking?
Mm.
But that's my only regret, is not moving to Nashville earlier, because I had all these other things going, like with Chuck, and I would never play with Stevie Wonder had I not stayed in New York. But the point is, when I got fired from that wedding band, then I got in another wedding band that was better, you know, and they were doing like larger parties, like Hillary Clinton's daughter's wedding or whatever, you know, the Chelsea Clinton's wedding. So that was the kind of office that was. The drums were backlined, and we would kind of have fun, you know, playing, and it was decent paying gig. But that's also where I met the guy, Russell, who then introduced me to Ray Chew, who then took me to Stevie Wonder.
Right.
So I guess my path from Stevie to Stevie Wonder started on a boat.
That's crazy. That's wild, man. I hear this all the time. It's really very fascinating.
I mean, it's not, you know, that's what I'm saying. It's all about your opportunity and how you choose to move forward. And
yeah. So you look at that $125. You can't look at it as getting $125. You look at it that I got to play with Barack Obama because of that.
Exactly. Because of this path took me there. And granted, I had to be good at what I was doing. I had to be cool. I had to be open-minded. I had to be, you know, I had to be a nice guy. I couldn't be a dick.
Yeah.
And expect to make advancements, you know. But that's how it happened. So,
that's,
you know,
really cool.
But the low point led to the high point.
Yeah, that's what's really cool, man. That's a great story. Thank you. And I like how you started it. You said, I like to remember that, because I think it's important to remember that, you said, because it makes me grateful for the journey from the measure.
It's essentially like Jeff putting the picture of the boat.
Yeah.
With him on Broadway, you know, things can be a lot worse.
Yeah.
And I always want to be moving forward, but it also helps you take measure of, you know, where you came from and how you get to understand, as Britt said to me once, you know, how your musical tree branches, you know.
Are you good with that? Like, giving yourself a pat on the back?
To some degree. I think I've worked hard. I think I've done well under my own efforts. I also realize that I've been gifted with talent and brains to some degree, and that plays in. I also know that being easy to work with and a nice guy also plays in. And, you know, I just sort of combine all those together and set out each day to return to the basics and do my best, you know. And I think when I mean, there have been times, you know, and I've seen it happen to so many people, they'll get on the road, they'll be in this road bubble for a while with this artist or this person, and they'll get this lofty view of themselves, and they'll get a sense of entitlement about themselves. And what's very important to remember in all cases is that this gig will end. It may work for you for 20 years. You may be blessed, unless, you know, even if you're Charlie Watts,
right,
that gig's gonna end. Somebody unfortunately will pass away.
Right.
It will stop.
Charlie's a member of the band, I'm assuming, though, right? He's not.
Of course. I'm just saying,
even if it's right.
Doing that for years, and it's wonderful, and they're selling out.
Yeah.
You know, their concerts are heavily attended. You know, they're obviously richer than, you know, I dare say not richer than Oprah, but they're making a lot of money, and
Yeah.
fine, they're set. But at the same time, that gig will end, and if that's your total identity, it's going to be hard for you.
Yeah, that's very well spoken, man. And it sounds like the fact that you're aware of this, you've got that covered.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I try to remain humble because I realize that the same people, because I've been that person,
Hmm.
that somebody might have been not so cool to earlier on. Now they're going to have to approach me for gigs, or they want to, or that's the way it works.
Yes.
So I realize that these people that I'm seeing coming up, or that I'm coming up with, or that I may be here and they're coming up, they're the people that are going to hire me.
Yeah.
Or have some impact on my career. So I think the takeaway, you cannot be a dick. You just
No, you can't. You got to be
you can't
easy.
have opinions, but at the same time, be cool. Because it's,
Wes, I'm going to ask you 3 more questions. One's a simple one. Favorite New York City food when you were living there?
Oh, man. New York City was so good for food, man. They didn't really have like down south, we have this thing called the Meat and Three, which is sort of like country soul food eating, and different restaurants like Monell's. And
I've been to Monell's, yeah.
Yeah, they have that, and that's sort of the cooking I grew up with. That my grandmothers, and mom, they all had this sort of soul country food thing. New York doesn't do that very well. However,
no, we don't.
What they kill, and they don't do barbecue very well.
No, I love barbecue, man.
Pizza, especially like, I think there was a place I used to go to in my neighborhood, because it was a pretty heavy Italian neighborhood in Bay Ridge. I think it was Giovanni's. Just had fantastic pizza. The only pizza I've ever had better was in Italy.
Oh, wow.
So Italian food was, especially in the neighborhood where I was, could tend to be pretty spot on. The Indian food was great, but really, honestly, where it excelled the best, I thought, was Chinese food. Like, I really felt like the Chinese food in New York, and the Italian food, obviously, but was really good. So that would probably, like a good New York slice. There's nothing like it,
dude. You're preaching.
Now with the macro diet, it's like, forget about it. But
yeah, you're preaching to the. Well, you can. I go back usually once a year, once every 2 years. I don't ever watch my calories there, man.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and they had this thing where they tried to make. They had like a pizza contest. I have a friend who's like a foodie guy, watches the Food Channel, but they had a contest of like trying to like make pizza and what was better. And what they realized is they had to ship in the water.
Yeah, I think it
from
is
New York to make the pizza, because they realized that that's what was making it happen. And the same thing, like, I grew up with Krispy Kreme donuts.
Sure.
Like, we would sell those as a school fundraiser. And now, since they've, obviously been associated with corporately with bad things, but I mean, like, we would sell those donuts for to raise money for whatever.
Boy Scouts or baseball.
They were great. They were great. And I remember going with my dad. We'd get at the school van because he was a teacher, and we would pack the back of them with like 1,000 boxes of these donuts. We'd go pick them up and riding home with those things. But that's the same reason that they didn't do well in New York, because the water is different.
Oh, so interesting. My kids love Krispy Kreme donuts. They have them here.
You're in the South, and
the
water's not as hard, probably.
Yeah.
It works. They're, for me, that, but as far as New York food, I would say the Chinese food and the pizza slice. Right. And Thai food is great, but the best Thai food I had actually was in Australia. Because of their proximity to Thailand.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And they said it's actually better here in some ways, because we feel that you can get better ingredients here than you probably even can in Thailand. So.
Favorite guitar players you've enjoyed playing with?
Oh, man. Well, obviously Robben. Robben is one of the world's greatest. I mean,
he is.
He's got chops, but he's got so much musicality, and he's such a great improviser that like when we're playing, especially when we're playing with Brian, I feel like we can take it to all these places and keep it interesting. We're actually improvising music. Like sometimes when I would play jazz, and even sometimes now when I do, I feel like we're playing, but we're playing at it. We're not really
In it.
And composing. You know, we're fishing. But I always felt with him like we're really getting into it. We're making music, and you know, you got to follow him. But if you do, and just his concepts on improvising, which, you know, I think he's talked about before and probably would have discussed it with you, but, you know, how he approached it is very much coming from that Miles Davis school, who directly influenced him, obviously being on his gig. So
Yeah.
It's great to have that lineage. Larry Carlton was great. And strangely enough, I got to play with Larry and Robben at the same time, and Travis.
That's wild.
Carlton, yeah, we all did some gigs in Texas. And it was crazy because I just moved into this house, me and Britt had, and she got sick that week. She had to go in the hospital, and she was actually in the hospital.
Oh, man, that sucks.
And had to have surgery when I got back on Monday. But it was like, should I go? Should I go? And she was like, no, you go. I'll be fine. And she, you know, which is kudos for her. But
that's what helps when you marry a musician. Or
exactly.
Something.
Well,
Yeah.
and I remember I had to like learn some of the songs on the plane. So that was a little bit intense for me, but the gig went well and it was fun, you know, and people like Christopher Cross were in the audience at the second gig in Austin. So it was just like, oh man.
That's
but
cool.
Luckily I didn't screw anything up, but that was a high pressure week with her being in the hospital. And all that.
She's all worked out?
It is. She had pretty intense surgery as soon as I got back from that gig. And it honestly it was a very long recovery for her. It took about 4 years for her to start to recover.
Oh my God.
So during this busy time in my career, we've also been, you know, dealing with that. But that's just, man,
that's life.
Life is going to happen. And but I do know some people, like I know Gary Novak, his girlfriend, I think, had a stroke.
Oh, wow.
And Glenn Worf, I think, you know, luckily Mark Knopfler hires the caregivers when he goes in town, but his wife had a stroke. So,
oh my God,
you know, but these guys, you know, we got to work. We're musicians, and luckily the people that we're with understand, you know, the challenges. But thankfully she's doing better now. Over the last year, it looked kind of dire about a year ago, but they found some treatments and have worked it out. So
that's great, man. I'm really happy to hear that. That's
stress
you don't need.
The reason why it's better to, just because I got tired of being on the road so much in a 10-year period.
Man.
It's been better to have this time off now. You know, to
hell yeah,
that's not time off, but time off the road.
Yeah, it's the most important thing in your life, man. And
it enabled me to exercise, but also, you know, I remember being with Robben in Brazil, and I had the phone. It was funny that night because Robben and Brian were, you know, they were tying one on, and there was this chicken that was we were in these little huts in Brazil. It was like kind of in the jungle, but we each had our own like 2-story cottage thing. And they had all these birds there. There was some chicken there that was crowing like in the middle of the night. And Robben and Brian were like, they were tying it on and getting a bit hammered. And I just hear Brian going like, I'm going to get that chicken. We're going to eat it. Just running around there. But at the same time, I'm on the phone in the business center, like trying to connect with Skype or something, go, okay, now you're in the emergency room, and what happened? And, you know, because she kind of had a very mild heart attack, very mild. And luckily they put in some stents, but it's just when that stuff started happening.
Oh, dude, that's heavy shit. Especially that's unusual for a woman.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, all her stuff was related to cancer treatment she had in her late or early 20s, actually.
Wow.
So all this is radiation damage. And granted, she wouldn't have survived if she hadn't had the treatments. So it is
wow.
But that's sort of, you know, that's where that's where the rubber meets the road with life and music. And I just remember somebody telling me a story about they were out with James Taylor. It was like Steve Gadd and it was Jim Cox who played some with Robben, great organ player. Just said that Steve Gadd and Blue Lou Marini were on the bus because they were out with JT, and Lou got off the phone. He's like, man, my heat's out. Whatever, the furnace is gone, the hot water heater was something. And Gadd just looks at him and goes, man, always when you're on the road. And that's the way it is. Like the minute I would go out on the road, something would happen, like there would be a rat in the house at this rental property that we have, and I got to deal with that, but I'm in Colorado, so it's just, it's one of, as you take on more responsibilities in life, it is going to be harder to be on the road because you have more responsibilities in life, and I don't even financially,
Oh, just shit happens.
So yeah, it's, it's important to, and I love going out. I still go out. I love going out with Robben and playing trio stuff. And like, I got a call today. I may have to go out the first week in December with the Little River Band.
Oh, that's awesome, man.
So I played on one of their records a while back, and I think when their drummer has conflicts, they'll call me.
Rich Herring.
Rich, yeah, I love Rich.
I've had him on. He's a great guy, man.
Yeah, Rich. Yeah. I play with Rich, and then Wayne is great, the bass player who sings, and so I love all those guys. It'll be fun to go out.
Yeah.
So that kind of thing I'll do, but like in terms of like having the now, if Paul McCartney calls, I'm going.
Hey,
Paul, if you're listening.
Abe's out for this week.
If Abe decides that, he no longer wants to go on the road, no, but I think there's probably about a 0.5% chance of that happening.
I don't know, man. You might have thought there's a 0.5% chance of a lot of things.
However, I will say there is condition, and that's what I mean.
There is condition.
I'm open. I'm not going to say never. I'm not going to say always. But I'm digging what I'm doing here at Sessions. We're building that YouTube channel and our clinic thing, and some live playing, a lot of live playing in town. And some gigs I do enjoy doing. It's not just to make a little extra cash. So I'm happy where I'm at, but I'm open, man. And I think that's what you got to be in this business, man.
Last question. Wes, biggest change in your personality over the last 10 years, and how much of that change has been intentional and how much is just a natural part of aging?
Well, a lot of it's been intentional. I mean, ever since I was a kid, I've dealt with some degree of depression and anxiety. And so I've had to focus on an active way of dealing with that, which I've done well. My father, unfortunately, was an alcoholic. He went to rehab when I was in college. So just about the time that I was meeting the teacher that had a huge influence on my life, my dad was in rehab. And I remember taking a lesson in college and going into my teacher, Mark Ford at the time. I just remember telling him, I was like, man, I don't feel like doing my lesson today. They found my dad in a hotel room. I don't know what was going on, but they had to take him to the hospital, a lot of drinking. And so he got it together and went to rehab. But I think obviously there was a period of time there in my childhood that I had to power through some issues. And I think when I lived in New York, I was the typical New Yorker. I was angry, especially in traffic. I had no problem taking someone on. Luckily, I never got really any fights.
Wow, that's really it. It's interesting when you hear something like this, because I only know you today, right? And I'm right. I'm listening. It's like, wow, this guy is like really nice and mellow and like smart, and like I couldn't see that.
For the most part, I was, but when I first I was the angry young man when I got there in my 20s.
Well, man, let me support that by saying you grew up in a family with alcoholism or any kind of addiction. There's a lot of fucked up shit you got to deal with. Well, that's not normal and does make you angry, man. So
and I don't want to make this seem like it was a huge part of things. Obviously, it's a huge part.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's not nearly as bad as some of like the artists that I work with, Joe Nichols. He had it much worse than I did.
Yeah.
And I understand, but that also has negatively affected him.
Yeah.
And he will say as much.
Yeah.
So, in dealing with that, I think I've learned to be much more adult and centered, and it's certainly been a product of being certainly getting older and wiser, but I think it's also been a product of just really examining myself and being mindful about where I'm at and what I need to do to make certain changes. And as you deal with these challenges in life, be it career, health, alcoholic parent, whatever, you become more mindful of who you are and how to get to who you want to be. And I think that's been really what's helped me. And and I know that I'm not like, there's some name people, and they're probably named people because they've had to deal with these issues. And I think what makes you an insane driven musician that will practice for hours and hours is the fact that you may be running from something. If you had a perfectly, completely comfortable life, chances are you're probably not going to be that insane and dedicated, but you might be.
Well, I think whether it's musician or otherwise, for the most part, a good percentage of driven people are driven away from, they're driving away from something. Yeah.
And that's what drives them to something.
I'm like that. Most people I know that are that driven are like that.
Yeah. And I think that's okay. It's not okay to let it just sort of consume your life and be a dysfunctional person.
Yeah.
So that's the work that I've done, in addition to other things. And I think it makes me a more successful musician. Like certainly being in the studio, or being a producer, certainly. You've got to have musical talent. You've got to have musical understanding. You've got to be able to deliver the musical end of it. But there's so much more to it, which is a degree of reading someone, trying to understand what they want, trying to hear what they're saying and really process it. And, because some people can't speak in musical terms that say, I want a decrescendo here, or we need to do this kind of feel that's half swung and just very limited with a lot of space. They may not have the ability to do that, so you have to like read their bodies, you have to read their tone, their inflection, everything to help you get to what they are trying to do, and you have this limited amount of time to do it. So that's part of the skill set, but that's been directly related to becoming more mindful and aware of what's going on. So
I don't know if you're aware of this. First of all, thank you. And I mean, to slough, I really appreciate that. And a lot of people get a lot of people are in the same boat and have had the same experiences.
Oh, I know they are. Like people that you've had on your show, I've talked with them. So I know what's happening. Yeah.
They've done studies about people that have kids that have grown up in stressful environments. And I don't know if you realize this, but they have identified those kids do have a much more evolved sixth sense.
Oh, absolutely.
About other people. So ironically, that shit that you probably had to deal with has contributed to your skill set.
Well, I think we all have the ability to do these things. I think it's sort of like if a person is blind, their other senses become more acute. And I think it's sort of like that in that you are dealing with having to look at someone, and in some case, certainly not in my case, but in somewhat of an instinctual level, you are making decisions by reading people to survive.
100%.
That's the extreme of it. Like if you have and I'm not saying I had this, but let's say you had a very abusive alcoholic parent. You're trying to learn to read their actions. You're trying to notice their body movements and whatever, so you're not going to become the brunt of that anger.
That's exactly right.
It's a survival mechanism, and it's a very powerful one. And it's one that, kind of gives you this Jedi, mind trick stuff. And honestly, it served me well in jazz, because in improvisation I can really listen and to somewhat predict what's going to happen.
And go with the flow instead of saying, let me wait.
Right.
Yeah, that's huge, man.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a double-edged sword, but
of course, the price you paid sucks.
Yeah,
the price you had to pay to get it sucks, but the skill set ain't bad if you're if you're over.
Yeah.
If you're over the price you had to pay for it. Yeah, man.
Yeah. So I think that's going to be true of a lot of artists, and it's a shame it has to be that way, but a lot of good has come from it. And here again, it's the same thing I'm saying. It's an overall arc and theme to the whole interview, which is, how can I take this negative thing and move forward and make it be a positive thing?
Yeah, man.
Be doing something at a place that was once a place of great pain. How can I grow something positive from this pain? And I think that's what it's about. That's what art's about. And like I said earlier, I'm trying to find a way to merge that art, that consciousness, moving it forward, and at the same time be able to make a living from it. Because, come on, really, this is a hard field. Don't let anyone fool you. You better love it and you better work at it, because it's chances are, unless you're Jeff Campbell, it's not going to fall in your lap. It's not going to fall in your lap 3 months after and he's an awesome player, awesome guy.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
He just stepped in shit there, and he would have to tell you.
I'd be the first guy to tell you. Yeah.
So,
hey, listen, I really want to thank you. You've been extremely generous with your time and with yourself and sharing, man. It was really kind of you. I know how freaking busy you are. Just thanks for taking the time.
Thank you for having me, man. Love being on the show. It's a great interview, and you did a great job, man. The questions, everything was formulated, in such a nice way. And hopefully, if I know it's about guitar, but hopefully there are a lot of takeaways here that just relate to.
Dude, huge.
Yeah.
I want to tell people where they can find you. First of all, it's Wes Little. He is literally one of the busiest drummers in Nashville. Things that if you're interested in getting involved with Wes, he's available for sessions and tracks. The best way to get a hold of him is to go to his website at weslittle.com, and there's a contact form there. Just go there, and it has an email address. I think you could connect with him. Please be respectful and maybe a little specific when you're talking with him. Hey, we're looking at doing this and this way. I mean, he knows how to respond. Don't just say, I'd like to hire you for a session. That's like, okay, what's part 2 of that? Let him know what you're interested in. What have you done? And, why do you want to hire him? Or what do you think it's, why do you think he's a fit? Just give him something like the same courtesy you'd give anybody that you'd want given yourself.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, that's all good.
Also, check out Wes's record that he did with Brian Allen. The band is called Clinically Speaking, and it's called Crazy People Dance Party. I also had Brian on the show a couple of times, once as a full-blown interview and once just to talk about the record maybe a month ago. So if you want to go back and listen to those episodes, they're available. Wes and Brian are doing a bunch of clinics as well. And again, if you're interested in hiring one or both of those guys, go to weslittle.com and just reach out to Wes. Tell him what you're looking at doing. And man, you'd be a good, I could see you doing, when you mentioned before, you like to go out and actually help people. I could see it because you've got your ability to present your life experience in terms of here's how to leverage this is really good, man. I really
thanks, man. Yeah, hopefully, one of these days, my mother's an English professor and she says I'm a good writer, so she's got her doctorate. I'll take her word for it. I'll probably write a book at some point. I'll probably do a drum instructional book, but also, but yeah, there'll probably be a just sort of a way to tie all this crazy adventure together. That's it's could be helpful for some people, surely. And I appreciate you having me on and promoting it. Yeah, like I say, I apologize the website isn't updated. There have been other things going on, but they can definitely get me there. And just as we go forward, we'll have a lot of great musicians on that Crazy People Jam party.
Yeah, so good. Will that be, go to YouTube? Yeah, the channel is called Crazy People Jam Party. And I'm assuming if you find Wes on Instagram, it's Wes Little Drums _Wes Love.
Yeah, I did that out of Questlove,
Questlove, yeah.
But I never fully changed it because people couldn't figure it out. So at this point, it's that long handle. But yeah, you got
Well, just enter Wes Little. You'll see it'll come up, you know.
Exactly.
And so look out for Crazy People Jam Party, the channel, and anything else, man? Did I forget anything? Miss anything?
Just our record is actually called Crazy People Dance Party. That's
Right.
For sale on CD Baby. If you want to buy a physical copy, you can also find it on Spotify and iTunes.
There you go. It's a great record. And like I said, listen to the episode with Brian Allen. We talked about it extensively. It's a really cool. I was shocked how good a guitar player Brian is.
I know, man. He played several of those melodies because we just, well, you know, we got down to the wire. We're like, oh, man, Robben, we forgot to tell him to do the melody. And we're like, uh-oh. So it was funny, yeah.
He did that one acoustic track like towards the end. I was like,
oh, yeah.
Who did guitar on that? He goes, that was me. I'm like, what?
My Larrivee over there, which is, it's sort of a bluegrasser guitar. It sounds great, but it's high action. So he had to work for it.
No, he nailed it, man. It was a good record.
He did a great job. But we're looking forward to making another record too. But we're definitely going to still, you know, put this out into a lot of different areas. And like I say, from the educational end to the clinic end to the video end. So
very cool, man. Well, I'll look forward to it. And everybody check out the YouTube channel, Crazy People Jam Party. Wes, thank you. Are you have any standing gigs that you want to mention?
Oh, man. It just varies. From time to time, I'll play gigs here at Rudy's in town. And
yeah, I see you at Rudy's Lounge quite a bit.
Just playing jazz because I like it. You know, there might be tens of people there. And then it's mostly just been here in the session scene, you know.
Awesome.
But there are definitely some gigs, and I usually post about them either on Instagram and it propagates to Facebook.
Awesome.
So they'll be up and about.
Very cool, man. Well, if you're in Nashville, look for Wes. A great drummer, great guy, super talented, total professional man in everything he does. So you're in good hands with him.
Oh,
thank you, brother. I appreciate it. Everybody, you're welcome, man. Thanks for coming on the show.
Everybody loves guitar for sure.
Thank you, man. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this, please share it on your social media channels with your friends. I appreciate it. We appreciate your support. Check out Wes Little online at weslittle.com and look for Crazy People Dance Party, the record he and Brian Allen did together as the team of Clinically Speaking. Great record. Like I said, go to everyonelovesguitar.com. Look for Brian Allen. You'll hear the interviews. YouTube channel, Crazy People Jam Party, and check out what Wes is. And if you're looking to hire someone for tracks or studio work as an excellent drummer, he's a guy to call in Nashville.
Yeah, man, please. Love to do it.
And he's always busy. So, and most important, so thanks very much, and check out and support Wes and what he's doing. Most important, don't forget that happiness is a choice, so choose wisely.
I agree.
Yeah, man. Be nice, go play your guitar, and have fun. Until next time, peace and love, everybody. I'm out. Wes, thank you for everything.
Thanks, Craig.